All right, Joel Gausten here from joelgausten.com. For this conversation, I'm really just honored to be joined by not only the person who got me into this crazy business to begin with, but somebody who throughout my career has served as a true friend and a true mentor every step of the way. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome my dear friend, Tom Greco. Tom, great to see you.
Thanks, Joel. Thanks for the compliments. It's a pleasure to see you as always, and I'm honored to be on your show.
Thank you so much, man. And first of all, we should say, it's another Jersey connection. I do a lot of New Jersey centric conversations on this channel. You're coming to me from the beautiful town of Nutley, New Jersey. I just had a recent guest 2 days ago from Nutley as well. So as usual, all roads lead to Nutley. That just seems to be the case.
That, you know what? I couldn't be more Nutley than anyone. I mean, there could be no one more Nutley than me. I live on Nutley Avenue. I do the PR for the town of Nutley. I've been here all my life. My business has been here all my life. Yeah, I mean, now I'm Nutley through and through.
Great. Well, let's get the real important question out of the way about Nutley. What is your opinion of the current state of Nutley pizza? Where's the place to go in town?
Oh, that leads to. I'll start off with a funny story. There's a place in town that we'll go nameless. First of all, uh, had been going there since it opened in 1962. My family, as a kid, obviously I was 2 years old, went there, every week, at least twice a week. We would walk home from school in seventh and eighth grade and stop there, and this is in the mid '70s, and we say, hey, the owner's name was Mike. So Mike, what, because it would open at 3:30 in the afternoon, and they would back then there was no such thing as slices. You had to buy a pie, so we get a pie. A friend of mine, Bruce Feline, and we'd get a pie, and we'd say, hey Mike, what, did you ever think about selling slices? Idea goes up. Before you know it, he opens up at noon to the lunch crowd, sells slices. I'm still waiting for my share, but turn, I'd say 20 years later, no, maybe 30 years later, again, going to this place. I think it was 2015. Yeah, so that's what, 55 years, right? Regular customer, 55 years. It's on its third owner, but the new owner worked there under the old owner, so I've known him since he was maybe 15. Now he's around my age, 60, whatever. He just kept screwing up my order week after week. Week after week, I would go in, I would say, this is the way I want the pizza. Can you please? Because I had open heart surgery, so I had to have it made a certain way,
Right.
to try to stay healthy. I'd go in and they'd make it the wrong way. And I'm like, what is wrong with you people? So finally they made it perfectly. I took a picture of it, I printed it out, brought it down there and said, put this on your fucking wall and just look at it. And all you have to do next couple of times, perfect. Then again, I go down there, it's totally wrong. I'd send my wife down, totally wrong. Finally, I went down there and I threw the pizza on the thing. I'm like, I'm done with you. And he's like, wait, come back. We'll make it. I'll come back in a half hour. I'm like, fuck off. I don't have a half hour for you. So that wasn't the last time. That was one of the last times. Then my kids had they're 4 years apart, so they were graduating high school and college at the same time. So we had a party, and I had to cater it. And he screwed up the order. The party started at 7 o'clock. At 7:15, the food's not there. The people are there. I'm calling him, and it's the kind of place where they still have the rotary dial, so they don't have a hold. So they pick up. I say, "May I speak to the guy's name?" They put me on the side, and I can hear the pans and everything, whatever. 10 minutes later, he picks, hey, how you doing, Tom? What's going on? Where's my food? Oh, we don't have to be there at 7:30. I'm like, no, you idiot. Whatever. So that was it. 2015. So I'm 8 years sober of that pizzeria. And it's unfortunate because it's the best pizza I've ever had. And it took me about 3 or 4 years to find another pizzeria that matched that same kind of order that I like. And I did get that, so I'm happy now. But every time I go by it, because obviously it's in town, I try not to get there at light, because if I smell it, I start getting the shakes like an addict because I miss it so much. So, yeah, Nutley is known for pizzerias and nail salons. We're full of them. But there isn't a bad, you can't get a bad slice of Nutley. Let me put it that way.
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
And for the non-Jersey people watching this, Yeah, you gotta understand, pizza's not just a luxury or a casual dining thing. It's serious shit in that part of New Jersey, any part of New Jersey. I travel the country and I base your city people on your pizza, and most of your pizza sucks. You want the real thing, you go to New Jersey, you talk to Tom, talk to me. This is serious business here. We don't mess around with our pizza.
No, we live in what we call the spaghetti triangle,
Yeah.
which is Bloomfield, Nutley, and Belleville. And that's, well, it's not. I mean, South is not as much, but Nutley's weird. Nutley, we're surrounded by Belleville, Clifton. We're one town away from Newark, yet we have kind of a bubble over us, and because most of us never leave, so it's a very very heavy Italian American population, and we keep it that way, and uh, it's good in that way because everybody knows each other, but also leads to about a pizzeria in every corner. So
Yeah. Yeah. So I would encourage people to go to Nutley sometime if you're into pizza and sample some of the local
yeah.
places. And
Even Barstool's been here numerous times. They give high scores to everyone in Nutley. It's crazy.
yeah, yeah, I'm pretty obsessed with that channel actually.
One
I
bite,
think,
everybody knows.
yeah, I always keep an eye on it every day in case he
Yep.
posts a new review because that's important shit. This is important stuff, folks. This is not,
Of course.
people talk, there's an election going on. Fuck it. We're talking
Nah.
pizza. That's the important thing. That's really the
They should ask those two people where did they get their favorite pizzas from. Then you vote for that. That's how you vote for
yeah.
them. How about that?
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So we have a lot of history.
Wait, Joel. One would say I have the greatest pizza ever. We've been told it's the greatest pizza ever. The other one will say, "What's pizza? How do you spell it?" I'm not biased or anything, but go ahead. No politics.
I was gonna say you and I, we have quite a history. We started working together back in the year 2000 when I was fresh out of college, 23 years old. I still had hair, which may have something to do with the publishing industry, but that said, you've published different styles of magazines over the years, predominantly automotive. You've done a lot of automotive trade publications from the very beginning of your company, and we'll get into all that. But you and I crossed paths initially because you were the publisher of Liner Notes magazine, the music magazine in New Jersey. You did that for several years. So let's kind of start there because obviously I'm looking at the CDs behind you. I know having been in that space, that's like 1/50th of the entire picture here. You are one of the most passionate, intense music enthusiasts I've ever known, and I'm pretty crazy about it. But you're next level compared to me. So let's kind of rewind that to the very beginning. When and how did music really first take hold of you to where it was really such a passion for you to this day?
Well, being the youngest of five, all my music really came from my siblings, and it was passed down to me to some extent. My oldest brother is 12 years older than me, so um, he got me, following him around. He allowed me to fall in love with doo-wop music.
Mm,
So in the very beginning, I was into, I mean, and again, each of these steps I still am to these days. I love doo-wop music. The early bands from groups, they weren't bands back then, but the early 50s music and later 50s music, I should say the early 50s music was more like, or mid 50s, it starts with Chuck Berry and Little Richard. I mean, I love Chuck. I love Little Richard. They're just phenomenal. Fats, all those guys, actually, I think I found those guys for myself, because now I think about it, when I was 11 or 12, that's when the first rock and roll revival started coming around, and that's when I fell in love with that kind of music, with regard to Chuck Berry and Little Richard, in fact, because they were doing all the rock and roll revivals then. So there was a movie that came out in 1972, I think it was called. It's called Let the Good Times Roll, and it was a film based on rock and roll revival. So I had Little Richard, Chuck Berry, Chubby Checker, the Shirelles, and it was a guy, Richard Nader used to be. He was the first rock and roll revival promoter. So he used to go around the country doing these. So anyway, it was a documentary on that. you ever find it, watch it. It's fantastic. But that got me into that section of the '50s music. Um, Elvis was, Elvis was omnipresent. Yeah, omnipresent. God, I can't even talk. Omnipresent. Elvis, I think, was in everybody's life, and I fell in love with Elvis from the first day I heard him, that was probably through watching him on TV. But interestingly enough, with Elvis, I don't like, everybody points to the Sun Sessions. I don't like the Sun Sessions. I think they're raw and they're kind of boring to me. That's all right, Mama stuff. Baby, let's play house. That stuff never moved me. I like the from RCA when he went to RCA and Heartbreak Hotel on. I
Yeah.
love that. That's my Elvis. Elvis 56 really, from 56 on. And I even, again, I disagree with the masses where I love Elvis's movie music. Everybody dismisses Elvis's movie music as most of it, and most of it is crap. But there's at least one great song in every soundtrack, and even more so if you dig a little deeper. But Elvis is omnipresent. Elvis is just, don't give me that crap about him robbing, music from black people, or he's not the king of rock and roll. If it wasn't for Elvis, none of the black artists would have ever been heard. That's the truth. So, and he always gave them the respect that they deserved. Okay, the Colonel may not have, in terms of saying, okay, you want to write a song for Elvis, he's got to be a co-writer. That was the business back then. Otis Blackwell wrote "Don't Be Cruel," wrote a ton of songs for Elvis. Elvis is written as a co-writer. That Elvis had nothing to do with that. And again, it's just that there seems to be some kind of history, rewritten history, and they did that in the movie too, where Elvis kind of stole from black artists. Elvis loved black music, he loved country music, and he combined all that to make rock and roll, and bring it to, I should say, rock and roll to the masses. Because again, Little Tutti Frutti was a big hit for who? Pat Boone, because Little Richard couldn't get on the radio, right? Elvis records Tutti Frutti, everybody hears it, right? And it's just like, and Elvis gives credit to Richard. Richard and they're all friends with Elvis. So again, I didn't want this to be a defense of Elvis, but I just feel that Elvis is getting kind of lost in the shuffle now, especially the further we get away from it, and the more society changes, the less people remember that he was bigger than life. He was an icon, and musically, if not for him, we don't get the Beatles. You know what I mean? If we don't get the Beatles, we don't get Led Zeppelin, we don't get Elton John, we don't get every other Metallica, we don't get anybody if
Right.
not for that progression. And it starts with Elvis. Yes, Chuck was before him. Yes, Richard was before him. But those guys couldn't get that music on the radio. They couldn't get to the white kids. If you couldn't get to the white kids because of the way the country was made up then, you weren't going to get anywhere. You weren't going to make money. All right. You weren't going to play to them. You weren't going to sell records to them. Elvis broke that barrier. And I think he doesn't get enough credit for that. So anyway, but that's, getting back to again, we got to doo-wop, Elvis. Then my middle brother, who's 7 years older than me, was into the Four Seasons. So he brought the Four Seasons into my life, and I'm like, wow, this is great. I did never put the Jersey connection in back then, because again, I'm born in 1960, so the Seasons big hits are 63 to 68 basically. But I'm listening to the Seasons, and I'm like, wow, this is fucking amazing. This is great music. Then it really falls. Then my second eldest sister, Diane, she kind of was into the pop music, and we were only 4 years apart, so we kind of learned the same kind of music or listened to the same kind of music as we were growing. The key was, and let me just go back to my middle brother Steve, real quick. Steve, again, 7 years older than me. When he came back from college, the first couple years from college, which is 72, 73, he's bringing back 73, I should say. He's bringing back Bruce Springsteen, Greetings from Asbury Park, The Wild Innocent, and the East Street Shuffle. He's bringing back Eric Clapton. He's bringing back disco music. Okay, he's bringing back all this stuff he's bringing back Bowie. He's bringing back Ziggy. He's bringing back Aladdin Sane. And I'm getting exposed to all this stuff that I never would have, because I didn't know where to find it. So, my head is spinning here. I'm listening to, you got the Five Satins over here, got Elvis over here, got Chuck Berry over here, I got Bowie over here, I got Springsteen over here. So I'm getting all of these things in. And then top it off, my oldest sister, Gloria, she was the Beatlemaniac. And that's really the first really music that I remember attaching myself to. I didn't see them on Ed Sullivan. I'm sure it was on in my house, but I was three. I just turned three, so I don't remember it. But I think the first music that I ever put, who a band to or artist to music was the Beatles. And Gloria had the Beatles guitar, and we have Super 8 films of her playing that guitar, and in the wig, and me right by her dancing. So it was the Beatles from day one for me in terms of the ones that were the idols and the big ones too from then until this day, actually. So that's so I was blessed that I had all these sources to feed me every type of music. And I just once I got on that road, I just once I remember from the time I start, I probably turned around 10, maybe even earlier, 9. My sister Gloria would take me up to the mall, and she would go shop, and I would go to Sam Goody's, and I would go buy albums. Or my sister Connie would take me to Newark, and they'd had these 1,000 record stores in Newark. I remember buying the Earls "Remember Me Baby" album in Newark. Or I go up, they take me up to Hackensack to a relic rack that had every 45 ever put out, and I would just go in. And it got to a point where I started getting. I got my first 8-track recorder around 1972 for Christmas. So I started making my own mixtapes at 11, right? So then I'm making whatever Beatles, whatever, and then I get the idea. Wait a minute, why can't I make year tapes, right? So I go back and do research, and I'd find every song that came out that year, and then I make the list up, and I go up to the relic rack, and I get 50 45s, and then I would come home and I would make mixtapes of all these songs that because it's not like now where you just got to go on the computer or on iTunes, Spotify, and you can find any song. Back then, there was no other way to access these songs, especially if they were obscure and if they're out of print, other than going and finding these 45s, which again I still have to this day. But I had such a wealth of music around me, and then it was like a drug, and it is still a drug to this day for me.
Definitely. To the very best of my knowledge, you didn't pursue playing music yourself, right? That was not
Never.
which is
No,
surprising to me.
yeah, I've attempted, like, not when I was a kid. I think I attempted to try to play the guitar maybe when I was like 30, and I just had no aptitude for it. And it's kind of like, you know, anything to do with my hands other than writing, I can't do anything. I mean, my family owned construction was we come from construction, right? My dad owned a construction company, typical Jersey thing, right? Um, I can't put a hammer to nail, honest to God. I've published automotive magazines for 30 years. I can't change a tire. When it comes to doing anything with my hands, and it's the same thing with instruments. I just, even when we play, we played what do you call it? Guitar Hero, right? I suck at that. I can't keep the beat with the drums. I barely can do the thing with the guitar. I just have no musical ability whatsoever. So I can never sing. So you know what? I'm a listener, and I'll be a listener to the day that day I die.
Right, right. Well, it's the same with me. I working with you, I covered the auto industry for decades, adding up all the years. I barely can fill my gas tank. It's terrible. All of our constituents and colleagues are talking about, putting a quarter panel here and doing, uh-huh, uh-huh,
Yeah,
uh-huh. I
exactly.
just write the stuff, man. I don't.
Yeah. Well, the standard line is, look, because people will ask me, as I'm sure they ask you, hey, how do I do this? How do I fix this? So look, I don't know how to do it, but I can write about it.
Yeah,
But I mean, that's it. I'm a writer. I'm not a technician. So,
right.
even our clients that we've had for decades still don't understand that. But that's the fact of the matter. So, yeah,
Yeah.
it,
Well,
it's
I
pretty.
mean, that's kind of the soul of the writer, is being able to tell the story
Yeah.
regardless of what the genre is. So that kind of leads to my next question, because obviously you have built a career in publishing that lasts to this day. And when I say publishing, I mean predominantly print publishing, which we'll get into, in greater length as the conversation moves forward. But how did how did it all start for you in publishing? Because obviously you were writing, which I would imagine is the gateway to deciding to go in this direction as a career path.
No, actually, I was never a writer. Never had a desire to be a writer. Never thought about being a writer. Um, when I was in high school, I thought I was going to be $1 million bricklayer because that was the family business. So once I graduated high school and I went out and did it for a year, I I said, this sucks. You know, I came home one day head to toe in dirt, and my dad says to me, like, this industry isn't for you. I
Yeah.
said, great, I'm going back to college. I mean, I'm going to college because I hated high school. I hated it. And but I said, you know what, if this is the alternative, I'm going to college. So once I knew that that was the alternative, I had motivation to learn something when I went to college. So I went to college, started out as an English major, I think, just because I didn't know anything other than that, or nothing else appealed to me. Then switched over to communication. Once I was in communication, I tried everything. I did TV, I did radio, did journalism, and I liked it all. And I did actually learn to like to write journalism style, journalistically through a professor of mine named Herb Jackson at William Patterson. Just a great guy, and he kind of got me to write. Um, but it was never a dying passion for me. But then once I graduated, I you go out and look for a job, and if you wanted to be on the radio, forget it. You have to go out to West Jabip, Mississippi, to start and work your way back. And the odds of that working your way back to New York to make any money are 1,000,000 to 1. All right, so that was out. Getting into TV, you had to know somebody at that time because there was only, remember, at that point there's three major channels. There were a few HBOs around, but there weren't many jobs. And I didn't necessarily really want to work in New York, but I didn't know, I didn't care. So for the first year or two out of college, I was a permanent substitute at the junior high in Nutley, of course. Um, and then I got a job I actually, on the same day, I got offered to work at Scholastic Books in New York, and a job to work at a publishing company in Montville, New Jersey. And it was the same salary. And I'm like, you know what? I'd rather stay in Jersey. So I went and worked there, got the job, and I started writing for them. And, surprisingly, it came natural to me. I didn't, like I said, I never had a desire. I never loved writing. But once I started to do it, I learned to love it. Um, and then ultimately, I became the editorial director of that company within a period of two years or so. Um, and we went from, I think, 2 magazines to 8 magazines. So I was overseeing 8 magazines. And then, of course, what usually happens, more so now than then, we got bought out, and I didn't get along with the new owner. We clashed, and I went to one of my clients and I said, hey, one of our magazine clients said, hey, would you take a chance on me if I went out on my own? And they said, yeah, definitely. You're our guy. Thank God for them, because they came with me. So I went out on my own, working out of my house, my bedroom. And my first client was New Jersey Automotive, and they're still with me to this day. That was in 1988. And then from there, I've added multiple automotive magazines. We've done towing magazines. We've done boating magazines. We did a Maxim like magazine, and of course we did liner notes. So that's really what led to it. In the beginning I was writing 90% of the magazine. Now that we have 5 magazines, the only writing I still do is I do one column a month in New Jersey Automotive. Um, but I do like to write. It's just that you got to be in the mood for it. But that's basically the journey that I took to get to. I've been blessed. Not just, I'm not gonna say it's just because you're on here, but my greatest talent is hiring people, the right people, because the people that have worked for me, for the most part, have been incredible, and I couldn't have gotten here without them. Just so many great loyal people that broke their ass for me, and I'm very blessed to have been able to survive in the publishing industry for almost 40 years now.
Yeah.
Considering I'm a very small business and never had more than maybe 5 or 6 employees at a time.
Right. And it's important to mention, you have employees with you now. One in particular comes to mind who's been there 22 years, something like that, at least
We just went out last week and celebrated her 21st. Yeah,
21st.
yeah,
So her entire career
yeah,
has been spent with you. And I was with you. I had a little detour for a couple years out in LA, but
yeah.
taking that aside, I was with you 21 years. So I
And
can,
Aaliyah was with, and the first woman we're talking about is Alicia. She's Alicia Figuarelli. She's the vice president of the company. She's. I mean, I couldn't exist without her. To be honest with you, the company wouldn't exist without her. But also, Leah Velacci was with me for 19 or 20 years also. So yeah, I mean, like I said, I've been blessed.
absolutely. I can tell you from more recent experiences I've had, the corporate general corporate structure in this country, particularly for our line of work, is not conducive to that kind of longevity. There's a high
Yeah,
turnover rate in this
yeah,
industry. So I think it really speaks to the fact that I can tell you from my own perspective, that office in Nutley, that was, you made that a home for everybody. That was our home,
yeah.
and even when, I mean, I moved up here 15 years ago in New Hampshire and stayed with you for a number of years. COVID made everybody remote, which I know was an adjustment for people who weren't used to that in the company. But even with that factored in, you have the ability to make it a home. And I know corporate ease, like, we're a family. You always made it a family, Tom. And I think that really speaks to what you're able to bring to the culture of your business, is that you keep it small and you keep it tight. And that feels loyalty with people. It really does.
I appreciate it, Joel. That's always been my goal. Why work with people that you don't love? I mean, honestly, why get? It's hard to get up in the morning if you're not going somewhere. I mean, you got to love the work. I mean, you don't really have to love the work, but I think it's more important to love the people you work with, to be honest with you, because they're the ones that get you out of bed. The work can be anywhere. It's
Right.
the people that you work with that if they're, it's very important to feel like they're your friends. In a lot of companies, it's hard. People don't like to get that close because, you know, he's the boss. I hate when any of my employees call me the boss. I'm not the boss. I'm just a coworker with you. You're just as important as I am here, or else you wouldn't be here. You know what I mean? That's the way it's always been with me. And yeah, it's the family is a cliche, but that's the way I've always tried to approach it. Because in working in the other places that I have worked, you learn from your mistakes. You learn from what the mistakes that other people have made and why you didn't like it there. Okay, I didn't like it there because this is this. All right, well, I'm certainly not going to do that in my company. And it's not, I haven't been perfect with all my employees, and no one is perfect. Sometimes, things happen and there's nothing you can do about it. But for the most part, you try and make it a place where people want to come to, or want to, if they're like, if you're working from home, that you still want to engage. You know what I mean? If you have people that are like, oh fuck, I don't want, I hate seeing those fucking people today, or I hate talking to them, then I'm doing something wrong. Not the people that are working for me. I'm doing something wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So fast forward the story a bit, Greco Publishing gets off the ground. You're predominantly dealing in the automotive industry. That's always kind of been your bread and butter. Um, but along the way, liner notes take shape. So let's get into that. What led to the creation of liner notes, and what were the goals going into that project?
Well, I think I was Compact Disc World. Compact Disc World was a chain in New Jersey of 9 uh, CD stores, and they opened, I think, in the early '90s, and they were throughout the state. And of course, like I said, I think I was their best customer. Uh, so I think I got the idea from Tower Records. I'm sure all your listeners or subscribers remember Tower Records. Tower Records had their own free magazine when you walked in, and I think I'm pretty sure that that's where I got the idea from. So I called and said, hey, can I get a meet? Of course I became friendly with the local people that worked at CD Roll because I was in there every week. And I said, hey, can you give me the number of the owner of CD Roll? I want to meet with them. So I met with them, and I proposed the idea of putting together something like Tower Records. Initially, it was a newsletter. It wasn't even a magazine. It was like a newsletter. And they loved the idea. So, and I loved it because it was great because with Compact Disc World, we would do the magazine and they would pay us to do the magazine. That was it. They were in charge. They would get all the advertising on their own from all the record companies. So we had nothing to do with that. So like in our other magazines, everything else that we do, all our revenue comes from advertising. So it's our job to sell the advertising, write the magazine, print the magazine, all of that. Compact Disc World was a lot simpler because all I had to do was build one person. But anyway, so we did that. Started that as a newsletter. I think it was like 8 to 16 pages. And it was, I loved it. Again, I was still in my basement at that point, and it was fun because I love music, obviously. Also, you couldn't beat the perks. I was getting a lot of free CDs, getting a lot of free concert tickets. And I was still in my I wasn't in my 20s, in my 30s at that point. I have one kid. Um, so I was still, I enjoyed it. It's very, it's funny. It's kind of like knew that being in the music business, even though a retail store is technically not in the music business, they put the same pressure on you that the record companies put on their artists. It just seems like that's the mentality of that whole business, right? Because as much as I love doing it, they were a pain in the ass, Compact Disc World. Very demanding, just difficult to work with. Um, and it ended up actually being part of me having a heart attack and triple bypass, not triple, quadruple bypass surgery in the middle of doing that. But I don't blame them on that. There was a lot of other factors of that, but it was very stressful. Um, but I loved it. It was kind of bittersweet, I guess, because when it was good, it was great. Interviewing these people, especially when I interviewed them in person or even on the phone. But on the other side of that, my hobby became my business. And when your hobby becomes your business, then you kind of, when you come home and you want to listen to records or music or whatever, you're like, oh, I just dealt with these people all day. I don't feel like listening to anything. So I found that happening a lot. And that was kind of depressing to me because it was like, it was taking away my favorite thing to do, or it was leaving my favorite thing to do, a bitter taste in my mouth, a bitter thing to do, because some of the people that you interviewed or your heroes, I'm sure you run into this, are assholes. And, some of them are fantastic and it's great, but some of them are assholes. And you're like, why the fuck did I ever listen to this asshole? But you like anything else, it's like political views too. You separate that because the music's great. The music's great. It doesn't matter, but it does disappoint you. Um, but anyway, so we liner notes continued to grow and grow. We went from an 8-page newsletter, 16-page newsletter. Then we grew up to like you remember how Rolling Stone used to be a big paper kind
Right.
of news, yeah, a big newspaper. And people loved it. It would sell out, not sell out because it was free, but the stores would empty with it. We put it in every store. And then we went from the newspaper, then we went down to a regular magazine size for a couple of years. So it had a good run. I think we went from like 95 to 2001, right? Is that when you joined?
I joined in the fall of 2000, and I think liner notes was done by February or March of 2021.
Right.
I
We
think
had, yeah.
I got like I think I got somewhere between 4 and 6 issues done when I came on board.
All right. Yeah. So what happened was we were rolling along, and then I get a call from the owner one day saying, we're replacing you. And I was like, I don't even get a chance to match. No, we're replacing you. So they hired some other shit firm who destroyed liner notes within 6 months. So I mean, again, bittersweet. It should have gone on a little longer, but at that point, I like I said, I enjoyed the music end of it, and talking to the people that ended up being nice. But it also was, again, it kind of spoiled my hobby a little bit. But the ironic thing with regard to you is, and for your audience out there, is that when I put the ad in the paper to hire someone to write for our company, the ad was basically for liner notes. So Joel was hired, and Joel Joel was relentless. Joel would call every day, like, "Can I speak to Tom? Can I speak to Tom?" I'd be like, "Tell him I'm not here. Tell him I'm not here. I'm not," because I wasn't ready. So finally, we made the decision we're going to hire somebody. I'm like, we got to give it to Joel. I mean, just because he was so relentless alone, you know what? Because when I hire people, people think that the resume is so important. All the resume does is get you in the door.
Right.
For me, I barely look at the resume because what's going to win me over is the person, right? So if you got a decent resume, okay, come in, and that'll be probably the last time I look at it. Then I'll bring you in, I'll talk to you, and if I like you, and I think it's more about fitting in and everybody liking you, and you came in, and of course everybody loved you, and you came on, and unfortunately, like I said, within 3 months, liner notes was gone, and you're like, yeah, I'm sure you were thinking, what the fuck did I get myself into here? I didn't set out to write about friggin' oil changes and auto repair. I wanted to interview Mick Jagger, and thank God that you stayed. I mean, it was but I mean, you stayed because, again, you became part of the family. It wasn't just the work that we were doing. It was the atmosphere and the camaraderie that we had. And but yeah, that liner notes ended. But I mean, do you want me to? I can tell you a couple highlights from my liner notes experience that come to mind.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
we got to go to Bowie's 50th birthday party at the Garden. That was pretty amazing. Interviewing Sammy Hagar in person, sweetest guy in the world. I mean, just a real nice guy. Everything that you would think he would be. And I came up with a at the end, and it was like it was the which album?
That,
The one with his birth. It's his birthday is the name of the album. Ten
it's,
thirteen.
yeah, I think that's the one. Yeah.
Right. So it was relatively. It was I think the second album after he left Van Halen. So it was still fresh in his mind. And he talked about it. Sammy Hagar does not hold back, but he's just I couldn't believe how nice he was. Because it was just me and him alone in a hotel room, and and then at the end I said, and I've always been a Hagar fan. I'm sure a lot of your fans are gonna hate this, but I hate Van Halen with David Lee Roth. I just always did. Never liked them. I can't stand David Lee Roth. All right, not to say there's not some good songs. There are, but I hate him. I think Eddie's great, of course, but I think they're tremendously overrated. I really do. With Sammy, I love Van Halen. Yes, it's a different band. It's a completely different band. But I loved Sammy Hagar before he joined Van Halen. So I know I'm in the minority. I fight with people about this all the time. But anyway, so I was asked. I went back and I went to Sammy. I said, "Can we do a Can I just throw out songs at you and you tell me what comes to mind?" Which I always wanted to do with people because I always thought, and now everybody's done that. Like on every box set, they all do it now. But this is way before all that, right? So I was throwing out songs that he's like, "Where the hell did you get that from?" Because I was doing stuff from like the Hagar Neil Sean album,
Right.
Into the Fire. I think I said "Missing You." He's like, "Whoa, I didn't think anybody knew what that song was." Just the fact that he was that like down to earth was cool. Another, I think my favorite interview ever was Gene Simmons, which shocked the hell out of me because you see Gene on TV or whatever, and you think he's just this grumpy old saying, PR guy, right? But when I interview him, and again, I'm sure he's like this with most people, he was the sweetest guy in the world. They were actually promoting, God, I'm drawing a blank, Carnival of Souls, right? Which is hard to do, right?
Right.
Carnival of Souls that came out, and it was right before the reunion, so it was a weird time for him, and but he was so nice, and honest to God, Joel, he was the only rock star, maybe the only guy that I ever interviewed that remembered my name at the end of the interview. He called me Tom at an hour in, and I'm like, wait a minute, did he just say Tom? I mean, again, Gene's a pro, right? We all know that Gene's a pro, but no one in the hundreds of interviews I ever did, no one ever did that but him. So that stood out. And then to top it off, I said, Gene, can I send you a magazine when it comes out, and would you autograph for me? Absolutely. I sent it out to him. I got it back within a week. I still have it to this day. He signed the cover of the liner notes. So that was fun. Lenny Kravitz was I expected Lenny Kravitz. He had that attitude of being a kind of a mean guy, and he was a sweetheart. And really, I think the funniest one ever for me was LL Cool J. Now, I don't like rap at all. I mean, not at all. But he was going to be on the cover, so I interviewed him. Joel, the nicest guy in the world. He was so. He called his grandmother up and got her on the phone to tell me how great he was as a little kid. Swear to God, he got his grandmother on the phone. I'm laughing my ass off, and just really a great interview. Another one was John Waite, of Babies and Bad English. Again, he's another one. When you read a lot of these interviews when they're promoting records, which is what these interviews were, a lot of people don't talk much about, don't do a lot of research on the guys. They just talk about the record. With people like John Waite, I went back, I loved the Babies when they came out. So, you get through all the new stuff. Tell me about the new album, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so what were you thinking about when you wrote Head First, right? From 1978. He's like, what? But he was like, I think he said something like, and I still have the recording somewhere. It's like, Jesus, man, you know more about me than me. And I'm like, that's, that makes, as a journalist and a fan, that couldn't make you feel any better, right? And again, great guy. I lost some respect for him, though, when we saw him. I think the last time we saw him was at BB King's, and we were right by the stage, and we caught him looking at his watch while he was on stage. Oh, you can't do that, John. You can't look at your watch. But yeah, those are, I think, the highlights. The lowlights, honest to God, Warren Zevon was a scumbag. George Thorogood was a scumbag. They were just like, hey, I'm here trying to sell your record, guy. You don't have to be a dick. And they just, those were the two I think that stood out that were really, really rude. I think rude is the right word.
Yeah.
Whereas some Alice Cooper, who's done how many interviews do you think Alice Cooper has done? A million in his life, right? We were talking, we got disconnected. He called me back. I mean, that's and from little liner notes in New Jersey, right? This little dinky thing for this little chain jersey. He was a pro enough to call me back and continue the interview. Just it was an interesting run. And part of me wishes it never stopped because a lot of those great artists that I grew up on are still going. That I never got to talk to. I mean, I never got to talk to never got close to the Beatles. Closest I got to the Beatles was Julian Lennon, and that was really cool because it was. I think that was the first interview, and again, I could be wrong, but I tend to read everything about the Beatles and the relations. And back then, I remember that was the first interview I really ever heard of him, and he's done it since, where he ripped Yoko, like he
Yeah.
literally rips Yoko a new asshole. And this is probably 95. Um, and I was like, whoa, okay. I'm glad you're standing up for yourself, Julian, because I think this was actually before he got the little settlement that he kind of guilted her into doing. But
Right.
that was a thrill. I mean, I got to talk to John Lennon's son. Where else would I ever been able to do that? It's it was a fun part of my life, and uh, you know, I wish you were able to spend more time doing it because I think you would have. Oh, you're doing it now though, because you know what? The world has changed. You could really interview anybody now. Back then, it was so different, where you never could get close to your idols. You never could get to, who would ever think you could get interviews with these guys? Today, everybody's on a Zoom or they're on Twitter or they're on X or whatever. It's a totally different world. So I don't know if people today could appreciate the kinds of things that we had to go through just to get a 20-minute phone call. You know?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I never really stopped. Well, I stopped for a couple of years when liner notes ended. Then I moved to LA in 2003, and I was playing out there in a band. And LA, the more you're there, you realize it's a very small world. And I lived in the San Fernando Valley, which is where they all live. All those guys, when they're not touring, they all live in the valley. So just by being around, I started meeting all these different people, just as a person in the crowd. And then around 2005, I wanted to do things under my own steam. And that's when I started writing books. Eventually, my wife at the time bought me a website for my birthday one year, so I started doing that. And then when I decided to do this, I just posted my 100th interview this past weekend. And thank you. I would say of those 100 interviews, maybe three were through a publicist.
Mm-hmm.
It was through a publicist I've known for years, that who I'm industry friends with, who I can just call up and say, "Hey, I saw so and so's got a new record. What do you got?" You know. So the sort of formality goes out the window just by kind of
Yeah.
being around.
Yeah.
Um, and you mentioned hotel room, and that got me thinking about how different it really was back then. Because even when I was doing liner notes, when I mean, people don't realize today, but when a record company or a publicist would set up an artist for an interview, round of interviews for a day or two, they put him in a hotel room, and
Yeah.
then a hotel room would just have traffic of music journalists, or it would be like the hotel bar, or maybe the hotel restaurant. I remember doing corrosion of conformity in a hotel restaurant, but you and I would have to go through the Lincoln Tunnel. We'd have to find friggin' hotel, which is often a nightmare. We got to park,
Yep.
uh, get to the right room, and then the publicist would come down and usher you into the room or the hotel bar. Now you just plug in and go. So it's an entirely different scenario. Or these days, if it's an in-person interview, because I still do some writing on the website, not just this, sometimes a publicist will set up an interview while a band's on the road, which is the worst time to interview a musician when they're on the road because they're stressed, they're busy, their tour manager fucking hates you because you're showing up to bother
Yeah.
entertainment for the evening. And I've always tried to implore publicists, don't fucking book interviews when your band's on tour,
Mm.
or you do a Zoom in the hotel room. You don't do it the venue because they're always going to show up late. The
Yep.
food's not going to be there on time. They're going to be tired and pissed off. Maybe the drug combination hasn't arrived yet. All kinds of issues that go into a tour. And the tour manager's got to focus on the lighting screwed up, the merch person's having a problem. Here's some jagoff publicist, journalist who wants to bother my band for 20 minutes. So this kind of format's really the easiest way to do it,
Yeah,
obviously. But it
for
really
sure.
really was different back then. We were recording on cassette.
Yes.
Uh, like actual, not even micro cassette, like cassette back
And
in
if
the
we did it wrong, we were screwed, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I just recently stopped using micro cassettes. I was still using them as of like 2 years ago.
Why does that not surprise me?
No, I'm amazed I could even do this because I'm such a Luddite.
You know
Um,
what? Speaking of hotel rooms, I just saw another interview I did it with Ian Gillan, right?
yeah.
He and I like Deep Purple. I'm not crazy about them, right? And I wasn't at the time, but one of my all-time favorite soundtracks is Jesus Christ Superstar.
Hmm.
And all right, let's get through the new album, blah blah blah. Blah. All right, so let's talk about Jesus Christ Superstar. It's like, what? I'm like, let's talk about, because I haven't talked about that in 30 years. I'm like, well, do you want it? He goes, sure, absolutely. I loved it. And we spent half the interview talking about Jesus Christ Superstar. So interview, and which didn't get printed because that was all, selfishly for me, because that album to me, I grew up with that album, and people forget that he actually was the voice. He was Jesus on
Yeah.
on the original recording. And it seemed like he had a ball talking about it, because again, people don't do the research and don't ask him about those kinds of things. I always found out they seem to lighten up when you ask them about things that they don't tend to get asked about.
Well, that's the thing. If it's unlike I can text Chips enough and be like, "Come on my podcast, motherfucker," and we'll do it. That's totally different. That wasn't like a scheduled thing with a third party. But in those rare cases these days where I go through a third party because X artist has a new record coming out and they have 5 half-hour slots that day, choose one, send us the Zoom link, you're in. You got to think they're answering the same 5 to 8 questions,
Yeah,
right? So I
yeah,
try to think to myself, what else can I ask them?
right.
Because if you ask the same question, I've seen interviews with bands and artists who give the same answers for 20 interviews.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I try as best I can to ask questions where the artist knows it's not going to be a standard in and out. And I not necessarily curveballs, but things that really drive home the point of what they're doing. And
yeah,
that could be like a more obscure thing or asking about production and things like that.
yeah.
There's an art to that where it's not just the same thing because I wouldn't want to sit in front of a Zoom camera for 5 hours and answer the same 8 questions over and over again. So they certainly wouldn't either.
Well, that's the problem with today's journalism, because as well. I mean, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I still get the best rock magazines are from England, and I still get classic rock. I still get Uncut. I still get Ultimate Class. There's three. I get three. You know, of the best music magazines out there, and you could tell when these they're people of this generation doing the interviews, because they know nothing, and they're asking just the same generic questions that People magazine would ask them. But it's just maybe in a metal version, and it's just like, well, wait a minute, this is I've read this stuff 1,000 times. Do your research, ask them something different, get something out of them that they may not have. I'm sure they've been asked, like, some, again, we'll go back to Alice Cooper as an example. He's probably been asked every question possible, but I don't care who the person is. If you do enough research, you can find something that maybe they were only asked once or twice in their lives. Take it and maybe take that question and personalize it, but make it so it's something that it makes them stop from being the robotic programmed interview that they're used to doing and that have every right to do. But it's just today's the best journalism that I see in those magazines are guys that are our age and younger, because they live through it and they know not to ask the same old stuff.
Right.
But I was going to touch on something else that you said. I forgot though. Getting old.
Well, I mean, let's go there. I mean, let's talk about the current state of music journalism. One very obvious change between then and now is this. Again, this has become the predominant way to produce music journalism. And I
Yeah,
resisted years. I'm a steadfast writer. My audience is 40 plus. You know, is this going to take off? And I tried it for a friend. He asked me to write something about his album that was coming out. I said, well, I really don't have time, but we can bang out a Zoom interview. It will have the same impact. It'll still promote your record. And I did it that way with my friend. And I thought, shit, this is easy. Why haven't I done this, all along? Personally, I'm probably going to eventually, sooner rather than later, go back to writing because as much as I love this format, everybody in the fucking world is doing it.
yeah,
And you really have to be the person in this massive cornfield with the crash cymbals jumping up and down. You
yeah,
know, some of the interviews I have, depending on the artist, that gets carried on other news sites, predominantly hard rock and metal. It's pretty easy to get a headline elsewhere on something, but so is everybody else. So the convenience has led to a lot of cookie cutter music podcasts. Some are great, some are massively produced, and I'm a little bit more meat and potatoes. I'm just, let's get to the
yeah.
conversation. I'm not worried about the thumbnail graphics at this point and stuff like that. Let's get to it. But my audience, I look at my analytics, my audience is 40 plus.
Yeah.
So, but today's music journalists, to your point, they're much younger than we are.
Mhm.
Um, uh, you consume as much music media and music journalism as I do. Um, Based on your experience with liner notes and the art and the craft that went into that, what's your impression of what you're seeing today overall?
Well, first of all, there is no music journalism in the United States anymore. There's Rolling Stone, get the fuck out of here, please. Um, there, I don't know of any music magazine in the United States that's readable. Do you?
No, but I would also argue that there's plenty of overseas publications that are
Yeah.
that I mean, where they excel, a lot of those magazines is their layout. They have extraordinary graphic design skills. But their articles are glorified Wikipedia pages largely.
A lot of them are, but that's what I'm saying. It depends on the writer. Like, I know that classic rock. Again, I'm trying to blank on it's ultimate classic rock. No, it's classic rock, uncut. Q is not around anymore. Mojo, I guess. But there's one more that I'm missing in it. Oh, record collector. Okay, those are the four that I still get. Okay, and it's yes. I mean, I would say it's probably 70-30 cookie cutter Wikipedia to 30% guide. Because and you again, I recognize the names. They've been around for forever. Those are the guys that are still writing decent articles, decent interviews, stuff that you may not know, or stuff that you may have forgotten. The newer writers are just rehashing stuff that again you could see anywhere else. So in terms of and forget about the reviews. I was just looking through the new I think uh ultimate classic no it was uncut came yesterday and I think Bruce Springsteen was on the cover for the 40th anniversary of Born in the USA. Um, but the record reviews, it just the stupidity in it. Like I know they had a record review of a re-release of Ian Hunter's "You're Never Alone with a Schizophrenic," right? Came out in 1979, so that they just remixed it, remastered it on on vinyl, releasing on vinyl. So the guy does a review and he's like, you know, it's or the girl, whoever it was, good album, whatever, had some E Streeters on it, probably, and it says something like uh, a what do you call it? A high point that he's rarely hit since. Are you kidding me? Ian Hunter's done his best work in the last 20 years. Like he's put out at least four phenomenal records in the last 20 years, which is incredible. He's 85. God, for Christ's sake. He put out two in the last 2 years that are as good as anything he's ever done. And this idiot is saying, okay, well, wait, this guy's best music was in 1979. What the fuck? You don't know anything, you know? And then again, they're starting to get me angry. Now, I think I've written a couple of times to the two different magazines in the last few months because they've got me so angry. The other one was, Jesus, the one was it was an article on Bon Jovi. They were, because it was their 40th anniversary too, and he was on the cover of everything. And again, it was a lot of rehashing and stuff, and he thinks he's God's gift to the world, which again we've all known, especially those of us in New Jersey. But they had and again, not to get political, but they had a call out, Joel, that was about this big, right? Maybe 2 by 4 inches, right? The call out was, I don't know how what country is going to survive with Trump, something like that, right? So I'm like, wait a minute. This whole article is about his 40th anniversary. He's had vocal surgery. The band will not tour until he's fixed. They had this massive Netflix or whatever it's on documentary. They have a new album out, first new album in years. And you're going to pull a call out on Donald Trump, which is like, 3 sentences. And forget whether it's Trump or Harris, whatever. So I wrote them a letter. I said, it was Record Collector, actually. I said, as a subscriber and as a publisher, I said, are you serious? I said, do you really think a call out in Record Collector magazine, first of all, is going to have an effect on an election in the United States of America? The first, that's number one. I said, number two is I'm reading an article about this guy who's got 4 or 5 pertinent issues relating to his career, and you're going to use a call out. You're going to use 6 inches of printed space about a line about Donald Trump. What the fuck is wrong with you? You know what I mean? And people, who subscribes to Record Collector? Honestly, it's people probably 45 and over, right? That's know your demographic. You know what I mean? That's like I wrote again. It's silly. I sound silly. I sound like an old man, like the old man on the yard, right? I still subscribe to TV Guide, believe it or not, right? TV Guide, right? You know anybody else that subscribes to TV Guide? No, right? So in the back of the magazine every month, and TV Guide's not even a little anymore. It's regular magazine size. They have cheers and jeers, right? So they had one of the jeers one month was about the killing of a character in a show, right? A show that I had on my to watch list that I hadn't watched yet. So I'm like, so I wrote the letter to the guy. I said, as one of the 6 people under 65 is still subscribed to your magazine, why the fuck would you ruin it for me when I haven't watched it yet? I didn't actually, I didn't write him. I DM'd him on Twitter. And I followed him just so I could DM this question. He writes me back. He's like, well, it's been on 6 weeks. I'm like, fuck you. I said, wait, but that's the, I'm sure he's a 20 something, and again, I sound like an old man yelling here, but God damn it, it's absurd. The way that's, that's considered journalism these days anyway. Social media obviously is part of journalism now, and I accept that. It's part of the world. It's not that I'm when I use it, we use it as a company and everything, but it just seems like everything is like just half-assed, number one, and everything is, there's no mystery to anything anymore. I mean, when we were growing up, you think of, there used to be movie stars, for Christ's sake, right? Movie stars and rock stars. You didn't know everything about them. That's what made the allure. I mean, you know what I mean? I don't need to see Paul McCartney in a pub in Long Island sounding like he's 100 years old, which is all over this weekend, right? All I needed to know was like, oh, Paul McCartney showed up, and wasn't that cool? Then you're watching, you're like, no, this isn't so cool. He's 85 and he sounds 100, and people are acting like it's the greatest thing since sliced bread. No, it's not. It's kind of sad. It's not sad. It's cool that he's there, but I didn't need to see it. I would have rather have not seen it. I would rather read about it or heard about it. That's all gone. It's just I like getting back to your original question. I don't think rock journalism exists in the United States anymore. It just doesn't.
Well, one of the big and very obvious issues with anything music related in 2024, you can't make a living off of it.
No. Well, let's face it, journalism period. Can you make a living off it anymore? Not
Well,
just rock.
it all kind of ties into the various points you've been making. I've never used Twitter or X. I just dislike the format. But in the very beginning, it was like you have X number of words, and you
Yeah.
can use these emojis. And my first thought was, we're fucked. Because that's going to lead the trend to keeping things faster, shorter, less in depth, and low hanging fruit. Use the example of the call out with Bon Jovi talking about Trump. That's the low hanging fruit. That's the real you see in your social media feed.
Yes.
So, where I see publishing going and I've had some recent experiences digging around it, trust me. It's low investment, high return.
Yeah,
It's all that you won't believe what Taylor Swift said to Kylie Jenner today, and you click on it and it's a bullshit written article, more often than not AI written these days, which is a whole other issue. And you're seeing ads and pop-ups and bullshit. It's all just trying to get you to click on the link. Doesn't matter what the link actually says when you get to it. And that's what the state of journalism is. There are so many, journalism jobs available these days, which don't pay anything. And it's all SEO, SEO, SEO. Fuck off.
yeah,
What happened to the art of writing? What happened to you having a conversation with Sammy Hagar and then taking that and shaping it into something? My channel will have a very small, very interested audience for as long as I'm going to have it. I'm never going to monetize it because a 2.5 hour interview with a middle-aged musician is not the demographic YouTube wants. I
right.
get it's plenty of TikTok stars. I can have one or two on the show and get 100,000 views. But at
Yeah,
what cost? I have to want to do this with my time.
exactly.
So you kind of have to resign yourself that if you're going to write about music or have conversations about music, it's like your golf because you do it for the love and do it for the passion, which makes for a better product, but it's a product that few people want to buy these days. And that's the unfortunate reality of it.
Yeah, it's the unfortunate reality for my kids and my grandkids, and we were lucky enough to live during a time where all these great things happened, from the '60s on. But the future, I don't, again, as much as my kids have grown up in a journalistic household, they don't read. That's it's it just doesn't, they're social media, and nothing I can do about it. Me, I subscribe to long form websites because I want to read long form.
Yeah.
So sports or music, whatever, I want long form because to me, that's an investment well made in time. But they can't make money. I can't. Uh, not, defend's not the right word, but I can't blame them. There's no money in it. There really is no money. I mean, our magazines are long form. We're lucky though because and will exist because our industry, talking about the automotive industry, automotive collision repair industry, the demographic is 50 and over.
Right.
They don't want to look on their phones. They're on their computers during the day writing estimates and shit. They don't want to do that. If they want to read, they're going to sit down in the bathroom and they're going to read, okay? Or they're going to sit back at home or during lunch while they're eating. They're going to read a magazine. That's we'll play that demographic, but once that demographic ages out, then I don't know what we're going to do. We're going to have to find an alternative business, But then again, I'm aging out, so um, but that's just the way things are going, and you have to adapt. But in terms of for pleasure, in terms of us enjoying, let's compare it to actual liner notes, right? What happened? The next generations are not going to have any idea of sitting there looking at an album cover, flipping it over, or pulling out the inside and reading the lyrics while you're listening to song. I mean, that's half the fucking beauty of new music, right? You can't, today when I get, again, I buy, I'm guilty as anybody. I buy everything digitally now, right? I'll buy box sets, or I'll buy if it's an artist that I love, like Ian Hunter or whatever. I'll buy the disc. But even some of them don't come with lyrics anymore. You have to search for lyrics, right? And it's like, and even on, when you listen to iTunes or watch iTunes, I should say, with what I do, or Amazon, whatever. A lot of them have the lyrics while you're watching it, and that's the closest thing to being a kid and holding the album cover in your hand with lyrics, because it has the album cover and it has the lyrics. But these kids don't do that. They listen, right? You can't do that when you listen. But that's just such a special memory that these generations will never understand, and that's why this music will never last, because it's only the only imprint you're getting on it is orally. You know what I mean? It's going in and it's probably going out the other year. With the music we grew up on, it was orally, it was visually, you held it. You know what I mean? That you can't do that anymore. And I think that's whether the music's good or not is that's up to the person, right? But the actual format of that music, the fact that it's in the air and you don't have your hands on it, I think that's an experience that was just incredible. I mean, there was nothing like coming home with a new album, man. I mean, ripping off the plastic, right? And then if it had lyrics on the inside, whoa, this is fucking great. You put the album on, and you're just sitting there, and you're reading every lyric. And you're like, okay, hey, let me listen to that again. Did he say fuck? Man, I'll never forget hearing John Lennon Plastic Ono Band. Right, that was the first solo album from John Lennon. He says fuck on the album. Did a Beatle just say fuck on the album? Give me that lyric sheet. Are you kidding me? Working class hero. I mean, come on. You'll never experience that again. You can't experience that again. Um, it's just, and then if you want to go with the state of music, I mean, do we? I don't know. You say it's all shit, then we sound like tired old men. But
I I
uh,
wouldn't say it's all shit. I think what's missing, like you using liner notes as an example, that was kind of like a filtration system, you know, um, meaning that these days there's so much music. It's almost like you don't know where to begin. My inbox, I get roughly 50 to 60 albums sent to me a week. They're all zip file promos instead of sending a CD. And everybody's got a Bandcamp page. And these days, I have friends message me on Facebook, "Hey, did you see my post about my new single?" I'm like, "No, man. All I'm seeing are political posts and AI art right now." The only updates I see from friends, and I do care about my friends. That's why I'm on that fucking website, which I can't stand, because I want to find out how people I know are doing. Unless they're talking about Trump or Harris, I'm not seeing it in the feed,
yeah,
and that sucks.
yeah,
So all this volume going on of music, I don't know where to begin. So it's terrible for a new artist, because when I see an inbox full of 50, 60 records, who do I gravitate towards? Whatever artist is in that pile that I already know.
right.
I'm like, oh, LA Guns, Chip's got something new, or whoever it is. So the new upcoming band never gets listened to because there's so much of it. But liner notes, as an example, we kind of filtered that out, because we had a certain goal we had to hit. The store had records they were promoting, so we would talk to those artists. So there was a system to kind of weed out. Now everybody's like a local band sending you demos. That's how it feels. There's no filtration system. So that's one aspect of it. There's just too much hitting people. And it makes the experience less special and less enjoyable just because there's too many options.
That and yeah, I agree with you 100% on that. The way I go about for new music is the European magazines, because they'll have 100 reviews each month. So, and I'll read every one, and if it piques my interest, because they'll any good interview will tell you that, okay, if sounds like these guys, or they're influenced by these guys, okay, if it's some band that I like, then okay, I'll give them a listen. Unfortunately, I'd say 90% of them, it never works out. It never sticks with me. So again, I don't know if that's my age or not. Um, and then every week I'll go on and I'll look at new album releases to see what's coming out, right? And if it's something that piques my interest, I'll go listen to it. I'll see if it's worth buying. That, and the other thing with me is all my life I've been a completist, right? So anything that comes out, whether it's a band that I like, I gotta have it, right? Because I gotta be a completist. But I'm at the point now where, like, you know I don't need the demos from Sergeant Pepper anymore. You know what I mean? I don't need. What am I going to do with them? I'm not. Those kinds of outtakes you listen to once because they're interesting. But am I going to go back to listen to those? No, I'm going to listen to the record. So right now, the new stuff that I get, I would say the new stuff that I come across. Again, I'll sample stuff that I read about, because I don't hear it. I don't listen to my own music. I don't listen to Spotify or anything. I program my own music. Um, which I've always done, which you know. Um, but if it interests me, I'll take a listen, and then I'll download it. But I'll be honest with you. I think every new album that I get is usually an artist that I like. And again, they don't put out, like, I just bought Joe Kosecki's album, Joe Kosecki and the House Rockers. You ever heard of him?
No.
Is the Iron City House Rocker were a band in the '70s. Then he became Joe Kosecki and the House Rockers. Very Bruce-like bands from Pittsburgh. They're like Pittsburgh's Bruce Springsteen, E Street Band, and real great songwriter. Sounds got a vocal and style like Bruce. Not as good, but very workmanlike. So I've always liked this stuff. He just put a new album out. It's very good. I enjoyed it. Will I go back to listen to it? I don't know. what else did I get? I did download the Bon Jovi one, and I've grown out of Bon Jovi, I would say, um, because he got too political for me, first of all, and honestly, since Richie left, they haven't been as good. Uh, I think Richie had a lot more to do with the songwriting than people give him credit for. Um, I think what was the other one that you know what I still listen to, believe it or not, is I still listen to Hackney Diamonds, the Stones' last album. I thought that was great, and I still think it's great, which surprises me. But for me, that's top five in their catalog, and I didn't think they would be capable. And I'm proud of them. I mean, that's like they need me to be proud of them. But that was to me, that was that was just that was glorious to see them put out a really really great album. I was so happy about that. I'm trying to think what else recently that I listen to. I mean, every week, I go on there and then I search for stuff because I'm always looking for something new. Um, but it's just disappointing. Like I said, if it's not something new, it'll be a re-release. And by this time, the artists that we've loved, they've really released everything 18 times. Like how many times have they re-released Bowie's catalog? I mean, I downloaded the Kiss. I think Kiss had 40th anniversary of Creatures, not Creatures. Yeah, Creatures of the Night, right? A couple years ago,
Yeah.
right? And there was probably 40 demos on it. Maybe there was one decent one on it, but yet okay, I'm a completist. I got to have it. And then you're like, well, why the hell did I buy that? Where something like I'd love to hear the demos from Unmasked. To me, that would be, I would like that more, but
Yeah.
there's no method to or madness to it. So I'm getting less and less purchasing stuff, which saddens me because then I end up going back and listening to the same old stuff again. And then I get, as much as I have, I still get sick of it once in a while. I've done every Friday night for the last, Jesus, what am I? I'm 63, right? So I'd say every Friday night for the last 52 years, I've made a tape, a mixtape, or a mix now. I'm digitally, whatever, because that's my Friday night thing, right? So whatever, I'll pick an artist, I'll pick a year, I'll do all the research, and then I'll make it. It could be from an hour to an 8 hour mix, where all the songs, like I'm the DJ, all the songs blend together. So that's what I'll do, and over the weekend, and that's just a hobby of mine that I've done for, again, since I was 11, since I was doing it on 8-track tapes. Right as soon as I bought I got my 8-track recorder, I bought 2 turntables and a mixer, and then like I said, this is early 70s, so I'm mixing 8-track tapes back then, and now I'm doing it on a mixer with a USB stick. That's how far we've come, right? But but again, I get excited when I have a new album that, okay, I could add these songs to the new mix, right? But it's, the last 2 weekends, last Friday night I made or Friday and Saturday I did Eric Carmen and the Raspberries. Haven't had a new release in 20 years. I just felt like making them. Week before that I did 4 hours of Southside Johnny and the Asbury Jukes. They haven't had a new release in 7 hours. I mean, 7 years. So it's, you go back to that stuff, and again, it sounds new to you, but I love to hear new music. Like I said, Hackney Diamonds was such a diamond in the rough. I was just so happy to get that. Did I go off track there?
Oh, it is a weird phenomenon because I'm thinking about, the end of the year doing like my top 10 albums of 2024. And I haven't completed the year's not over yet. So there could be the hot new band that's going to blow me away in October for all I know. I doubt it. But, so far, most of the records I have in mind are what I said, new albums by veteran acts,
Yeah.
and not even acts that were culturally huge, because as you know, I'm a big fan of like punk, new wave, underground stuff. My favorite album of the year was by the band The Church, who last had an American semi-hit in 1989. 1990, but their new album is phenomenal. Um, Jack Russell, who we just lost from Great
Yeah.
White, he did a stellar hard rock album this year with Tracy Guns from LA Guns, which is phenomenal. But these are bands who, they had their time 30 years ago.
Yeah.
And that's what, maybe because I'm almost 50 at this point, maybe that's what's kind of showing my age, that I'm referring back to the older artists. But I would be very hard pressed to find a new band, like a brand new band or a new artist who's really doing something interesting and fresh, and that's why we're seeing so many older acts touring right now. The Stones are touring. Live Nation, I think it was Live Nation. They brought out Roxy Music in the last couple of years.
Yep.
These guys are 70. They're in bed by 11 o'clock, but those are the bands that are selling the tickets. So I'm very fearful of what the next 5 years are going to look like. Steven Tyler
Yeah.
he's
Yeah.
done.
Yeah.
So when these greats who we're lucky to still have, when these guys die off, the entire except for Taylor, of course, but the entire concert industry is going to fall on its ass because you have the mega acts, and
Yep.
then you got the middle of the road guys who are selling 3,000, 5,000 tickets a night. That's not going to support an industry.
No.
So I think that's a problem the industry needs to focus on, and they really need to bring up new artists more than they are and work on making their media presence more permanent. Make it less about the TikTok overnight sensation and go back to building artists again and giving them 3, 4 albums to build an audience and to establish themselves because there's not going to be anything left in 5, 10 years. I think the concert industry, if it keeps going the way it's going to be done within the next decade.
I think that boat sailed. I really do. I don't think that they're never. I mean, there's what is there two? There's two record companies left, right? I think two or three majors, right? Um, they've totally stopped doing that, and I don't think you get. Let's say, let's be honest. In the next 5 years, you're going to lose McCartney. You're going to not dead, but they're not going to be able to tour. You're going to lose McCartney. You're going to lose the Stones. You're going to lose the Eagles.
Yep.
We've lost. Who else? I mean, forget Taylor, like you said. Who else can fill a stadium? Who
You,
else?
you too?
Not across the country. No way across the country. Maybe New York, maybe LA, but they're not selling out a stadium in Midwest. No way. No way. But all right. But even let's say U2. Who else? U2 is they're in their 60s. Who else? No one, right?
That's
We don't
it.
even have. I mean, even the arenas. I mean, there's rarely any concerts. I go down the Garden State Parkway every Friday night, right? And they have the PNC Art Center there, which holds about 17,000, I think. In the past, every weekend, you had Joel this summer. Let's see, we're in August. I bet you I've seen one concert that was going on while I went down there on a Friday night. And it was the other night was Avril Lavigne. Think about that, right? So it's crazy. I think the concert industry is dead. And then with once the concert industry goes, the bands go because they can't make money on music anymore. How are they making music? Okay, they can't make money on merch because they're not at concerts to sell the merch. So and I don't think anybody cares. I think because again, the people that are selling records are Taylor, whose people whose fans are going to grow out of her. They're just going to. Beyonce will sell a lot of records because she's Beyonce. But I mean, all right, what you could name maybe 10 artists that could move 100,000 records these days,
Yeah.
if that. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what they're going to do. Like I said, I hate to say it, we've been very lucky in our lifetime to live through what we lived through because that's never going to happen again.
Yeah.
And it's just it's sad, but you know what? Maybe the shining light in that is that people will go back and and people who aren't aware of the Elvis Presleys and the Chuck Berrys and the Beatles and the British Invasion and all that stuff and go, wow, wait a minute, I missed out on all this. You know what I mean? Because that music is as fresh as ever, and
Oh,
that'll never it may be forgotten because, like I said, I think unfortunately, Elvis is fading. That the icon that he was, he's fading because he's not anywhere. I mean, they made the movie that brought him back a little bit. I don't think it's going to happen to the Beatles. I hope not, but I don't know. I mean, go to a high school these days. Can you go to a class say how many here can name who the Beatles are? I don't know if a lot of kids can. But they'll know some songs, but I don't know. I don't know. I used to be able to say that. Oh well, 300 years from now, everybody will still know the Beatles. I'm not so sure anymore.
mm.
I'm not so sure anymore. Which is sad.
Well, in 300 years, there will be the Beatles again. They'll be reanimated, and they'll be.
Well, that'll be next year with the avatars they're coming out. That's my friend. I have a friend Jeff Pizzuti who was at the forefront of that. He had a company that was they put on the Frank Zappa Avatar shows, and they put on the Ronnie James Dio Avatar shows, and I saw them. And they were pretty cool. They were still early stage, and now he's partnered up with uh, uh, Dolan's, the owners of Madison Square Garden. And they also own the Sphere out in Vegas, and now he works for them, and they're putting it. So if they can master that, I mean, again, for those who never experienced the real thing, that'll carry those brands on. You know what I mean? But for those of us who did experience the real thing, we won't. It'll never be the same. But think about it: for kids who never saw the Beatles or never saw Elvis or never saw Selena, he's working on Selena now. Um, they don't know any better. So that may be the future of the music industry. As long as they have a brand that will last. I mean, can that work for bands like Enough's Enough or Misfits, or I don't know. I mean, but who knows? You could put on a package thing, or you can rent them for your house for a party if you have the right screen. Who knows? That's kind of all the when they were talking about it. One of the goals for Jeff was in the beginning was like, yeah, you know what, we want to make it so that if you want to have the Beatles in your house for a party, you can. I'm like, well, that would be pretty cool, right? Avatars of the Beatles, right? In at any time, that's such a cool idea, and that's probably the future right there. Like Kiss is obviously going for it full steam ahead, right? But who wouldn't want to have Kiss in the same relation? Who wouldn't want to in the high schools? Who wouldn't want to have Abraham Lincoln or George Washington or Martin Luther King, an avatar there talking to them instead of a visual, instead of a movie, right? I mean, that's being interactive with that. I think that's the future, and I think that could be pretty cool if they can master it. But again, it's going to be for the people who never saw the real thing, and I think that's what they're thinking of. We're in the past, they don't care about what the fuck we want, but we lived it, so we have that memory. So I think it's probably the best of both worlds, and that's probably going to be the savior for these big bands and the brands that will be able to last that long. But that it's probably going to only relate to a certain few because it's going to be expensive. I know it's expensive already for what they've done on those earlier tours to try and pull that off. So, but who knows? Technology is a crazy, crazy thing. Pretty
Yeah.
soon, maybe you'll just wink your eye twice and you'll get a concert in your head. So who knows?
Well, that's it. I mean, we're talking about things that can change in the blink of an eye, and
Yeah,
very likely will. You
yeah,
know, it just feels very transitional right now, where there's
yeah,
not a real steady footing for artists. There's not a steady footing for people in our profession. Everything is changing so fast, and I feel like I'm white knuckling it every day, just holding on to whatever changes are coming, making the best of them, this being a prime example of this technology. But, I never made my money off of music. I was a musician and still am to some degree. I wrote about music, but the only time I ever made money involving music was when I was working for you, liner notes. That was the only time, music paid me.
yeah,
But at the same time, I've had to think long and hard about that, because it's kind of a drag, because I never took the jump off the cliff and said, I'm going to quit all my jobs. I'm going to go on the road. But I know plenty of people who have, and now they're my age or older, and it's like there's nothing left, you
yeah,
know.
yeah. You have
While
to you have to live your life and make your decisions and live with them and then adapt as you go along. That's all you can do.
Yeah, yeah. But what I will say, what's cool about it, because the money factor has been taken away from it, what you have left is the passion. So if people are doing, I mean, yeah, you can monetize on YouTube, and very few reach that level, honestly, to get to the point where you can actually make, if we were two 16-year-old girls right now doing a makeup tutorial, by the time I post this, we would have made a few $100.
Yes, yes.
We're
But
not.
but but to your point with the podcast, it's like uh you're the one thing that you're very very right about is that there's a zillion of them. Because for example, and like you said before about the choice between where we used to read against versus watching a podcast, right? Writing an interview, writing a whole interview in long form as opposed to just doing an interview on a podcast. I agree with you in that sense. But then again, I go on YouTube every night, right? And I have my subscriptions as to, you know, they know my likes, obviously. They know the algorithms. But if, I'll use this as an example. Say a few months ago, I went back and I said, well, you know what? I just listened to Grand Funk Railroad. I'm curious to see what Mark Farner's up to these days, right? So I'll plug in and I'll watch an interview with Mark Farner, right? Okay, found out. Now, next day on my feed for the next month, every interview Mark Farner has done in the last year is coming up in my feed. And because he's Mark Farner, who right now is probably a D level rock star, right? He's on every fucking podcast there is, and he's saying the same thing every time. And I love Mark Farner. Don't get me wrong. And I'm sure if I were him, I'd be doing the same thing because I want the exposure, I want my ego fed or whatever. I want to know how Grand Funk is screwing me, all those kinds of things, right? But it's like it's overkill. So you know what I mean in terms of monetizing it, like you said. So you could be doing the best interviews in the world, doesn't mean you're going to make money. It's the same way with any kind of social media. Everybody thinks it's all these bean counters are coming in, and we see it in our industry with the advertising end. The advertisers, the paint companies or the car manufacturers, they're hiring these 20 somethings out of college. They're like, oh, social media, and I have yet to see anybody make any money or get any ROI on a digital ad. Yet to see it. Not to say that they're going to get it on print either, but they will. Print is established, right? Okay, print is dying. I'll be the first one to say it, but print is still here. Digital is still down here. It's all perception, and the idea that you're going to make money out of buying because you're like me and like anybody probably at any age, you never see the ad in digital because you go like this, right? You never do. In print, you have to see it, right? You may turn that page quickly, but you're still going to fucking look at it, right? And again, I'm not here to defend print. I'm just saying that it's the same way with music is that the perception is moved to, okay, this is the way you have to listen to it. This is the way you have to buy it, whether it's you got to listen to it on Spotify. You got to listen to it on Apple Music, or you got to subscribe to some service like that. It's the only way to do that. Don't buy anything anymore, okay? All right, you won't want to buy anything anymore. And like I said, I'm guilty of it as much as anybody. But what happens if tomorrow Apple and Amazon and Spotify shut you off and say, you know what? Or we're raising our rates to $200 a month.
Yeah.
Wait a minute, I bought all those songs. No, well, you now you have to pay $200 a month for it. They have that power, and that's why, like, I've never gotten rid of my CDs, as you can tell. I've never gotten rid of my DVDs because, and again, I sound like an alarmist. I'm not being an alarmist. I'm just being, you got to think outside the box sometimes because they're proving it more than ever, right? In the last 2 or 3 years, whatever, that they want to take more and more control. And again, believe me, I'm no alarmist, and I don't believe in that shit. I think it's silly, despite some of the things that we've seen. But there is some truth to that you know what, there's nothing like being able to grab something physically, and being able to pop it in as opposed to relying on my computer and making sure it's where I thought it would be.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that it'll be there forever.
I mean, honestly, I work in front of a screen. I do this in front of a screen. When we wrap up, I'll be doing some other shit in front of a screen,
Yeah.
social media, whatever, answering emails. I find myself wanting to get away from it. I always get away from social media, particularly as November creeps around. And
Yeah.
just go back to writing books, talk about old man shit, writing books that, who's going to buy a fucking book? But the point is, that's my culture. That's where I grew up.
Yeah.
And I've realized that I'm not going to compete with the younger YouTube content providers and the X generation. That's not me, but the people like my demographic, the 40 plus,
Yeah.
it's a very small audience, but it's a true audience. And sometimes
Yeah.
you aim for the true audience versus the wider audience, and that's, I think, the trick to finding happiness in anything in the music industry these days, because you really have to do it from your heart. Otherwise, you can't fake it and make it because there's no making it. So you kind of have to just go with what you want to do with your time and what your passion is.
Yeah.
Uh, but one more topic I wanted to bring up, and I'll conclude with a question I want to throw at you. But talking about YouTube and things showing up after you look at something, my feed right now is full because I made the mistake of seeing a headline and clicking on it. My feed has plenty of videos of, going back to your earlier point, Frankie Valli
Mhm.
now, who's 90, I believe, performing. I'm sure you've seen the videos, um, because you're such a fan, as am I. You can't grow up in Jersey and not love Frankie Valli. Come on, the mayor of Munchkin Land. You got to give respect.
Yeah.
Uh, what are your thoughts on that situation with him going out there touring and putting on the show
Well,
he?
and lip syncing the whole show.
He kind of
Um,
looks like an avatar at this point, doesn't he?
yeah. Well, here's the thing, and I actually did write this on X. I said, because people were, were bitching at him and like, why are you forcing him to go out there? And um, let me put it this way: I saw Frankie Valli in 1980. He couldn't hit the high notes then,
Hmm.
honest to God. And if you listen to Four Seasons, and the Four Seasons really, which is surprising because they were a huge, a huge '60s band. They did not make many TV appearances. There's maybe six of them, I think. If you do a deep dive, there's not many at all, which is very shocking because the bands were all over TV in the '60s, but they weren't. So, but even back then, their records were very were produced extremely well by Bob Gaudio and who's the other guy? The other producer. He's from Belleville, actually. He co-wrote with Gaudio and produced all the records. Geez. Anyway, um, my point being is that Frankie hasn't sounded the same in a long time. Okay, so which is fine. Okay, you want to go see him, that's fine. For me, honestly, I never wanted to see the Four Seasons without the original four. Before Tommy DeVito, not Tommy died a couple years ago, but Nick died in I think the '80s or early '90s. So Nick and Tommy were and Bob were out of the band by 1970 anyway. So I never got the chance. I never could see the chance of the original four, which I would have loved to have seen. But anyway, I did see them in '80s. So getting back to your point, is that what I think about Frankie? Well, the joke that I made for have you seen Jersey Boys?
No, I haven't. I haven't.
Okay. Well, one of the Jersey Boys, which is one of the greatest plays ever. The movie is a disappointment. I love Clint Eastwood, but he shouldn't have directed it. But a major story in the Four Seasons story lifeline is that they had to stay on the road and for years and pay back the mob because Tommy DeVito owed them like $100,000 or something like that, like some absurd and they owed taxes all because Tommy fucked up all the money. And so the mob forced Tommy to leave the band and go work in Vegas. And then Frankie and the rest of the seasons had to pay off that debt, Tommy's debt. And Frankie insisted, I'll take care of it all. That's the kind of guys they were. Him and Bob Gaudio actually have a handshake deal for all the music. They were one of the few bands in the '60s that owned their masters. They own their master, which is out of nobody would think of that, right? They've owned their masters from day one, and they owned it on a handshake. Gaudio and Valli own it 50-50 up to this day, right? So, but that's the way they are, North Jersey Italians, loyal. And so Frankie took over Tommy's debt, and the Four Seasons went on to tour. And I don't think they paid off until like maybe the mid '70s when they did like this Who Loves You and December 1963. So anyway, my point being is that the joke that I made on Twitter or X was I said Frankie can't still be paying off Tommy's debt, can he? Right? So, but then I said honestly, God bless the guy. He lives to do this. That's the only reason he's doing it. He doesn't need the money. Like I said, they've owned their masters. They own Jersey Boys, which made zillions of dollars on Broadway, off Broadway. It's still going around the country, I think. They made money off the movie. Frankie Valli and Bob Gaudio do not need money. Frankie's 90 years old. He's been performing for audiences for 70 years. It's all he knows. Let the guy go out there and do what he wants. If people want to pay to see him, God bless. If they don't care, it's like all these bands that go around like Duke Fakir, the last four Top died about a month ago,
Yeah.
right? But he was still out touring, right, with the Tops. He was the only original one left. There's one original Temptation left, Otis Williams, and Otis never sang lead, but he's still out there with the Temptations, right? So if you want to just go out there and enjoy the music, go see them. Let these guys do it. I mean, they're in their 80s and they're still out there performing for audiences. And you know what? Do they need the money? I would say the majority probably do, right? They probably do. But somebody like Frankie Valli, why would he? Because this is all they know. Why is Paul McCartney out there at fucking 82 playing 3 hours? The richest musician in the world is a billionaire. Why do you think he does it? It's all they know. They love it. You know what I mean? So I don't. I respect Frankie, and if that's what I don't think he's doing it, being forced to do it, and if what I believe is true, then God bless him, and I hope he does it until he dies because he gave us so much pleasure. All these people, all these artists. I was watching Friday night. I went back and I watched I just wanted to watch the end of Let It Be. Let It Be, and it was remastered, and with Get Back on Disney Channel. So you know what I said, and it made so clear, like the video and the audio. So it's like it was made today, right? So I went back and I just wanted to watch the three songs that they do at the end of Let It Be, which is Two of Us, Let It Be, and The Long and Winding Road. And once I watched that, I said, I got to watch the rooftop performance. So I watched the rooftop, and you know what? I just was like, I had like a tear in my eye because I'm like, these guys were gods. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? And even to this day, they're fucking gods, and no one will ever touch them. And it's not because they were normal guys. You could see they just loved each other, right? They loved what they were doing. Even at that point in their career, you could just see that and they just, I mean, they made the songs, they made the whole album Let It Be in 3 weeks. They made the movie, they wrote all the songs, and they performed it in 3 fucking weeks. And this is 2 months after releasing the White Album, which had 30 songs on it,
Right.
and Hey Jude and Revolution, which came out too at the same time. Think about that. That's just, it's uncomparable. You know what I mean? And I'm just watching it. I'm like, motherfucker, I'm so lucky to have seen this and lived through this, and that they were around while I was around. And that we still, and now we have, we'll have this visual documentation forever. And it's not because I love just them, and they're, again, they're up there, but whoever you love, there's so much documentation every Friday night, Joel. The Midnight Special, which was for me the greatest music show ever in the '70s. Every Friday night at 1 a.m., hour and a half would be of any act you could imagine singing live, whether it be Kiss, all right, Kiss was on there, or AC/DC, or they'd have oldie shows with Fabian and Frankie Avalon. And I just watched one the other night, Lou Christie, who sang The Gypsy Cried and Lightning Strikes, still hitting it. And it's just like, you know what? 50 years ago, that's exactly where I was on a Friday night at the same time watching a new Midnight Special. And they release a new one every week. So it's like I'm going back in time every Friday night, making my tape, going to watch the Midnight Special. The only thing that's different is there's no commercials, right? So it's just the fact that we have the technology to do that. It's just, I don't have words for it. It's just, I mean, it's just magic.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
know.
I
But
totally agree. I mean, going to the Frankie Valley point, the thing is, like, I was born in 77, so I missed so many boats entirely. But I have gone back and I've watched like the old Rat Pack vibe, and the old school entertainers like the Frankie Valleys. I wasn't around in the 60s, but I love all that stuff. So I'm watching a clip of his performance and the intro where there's like the screens are showing like news articles and appearances on classic talk shows, and there's a voiceover, I always had a dream and all this. And then bang, into Greece. The crowd's going nuts. There's Frankie Valli. He looks like a wax doll. He can't move. But the thing is, I'm like, motherfucker, I'd pay to see this show.
yeah,
Because it's a celebration of more than just the artist, it's the culture. Like I was down for one of the car shows in Vegas. I went to go see Barry Manilow. If you look at him talk, he can't open his mouth. He's got so much bloody Botox. So, that's all, is it real? Is it Memorex? It's fucking Memorex. But I was crying like a woman next to the old ladies, because it was such a powerful show. And they showed him on the Midnight Special, you
yeah,
know, playing back in the day. And like again, I would pay to see Frankie Valli today
yeah,
because, is that show going to be here a year from now? So you gotta celebrate and you gotta honor that history as it's still around. So, going back to your Avatar point, anything that keeps that alive, that inspires people to go, wow, that's amazing. That is something I've never seen anywhere else. I mean, isn't that the whole point of music and art, is to give people something they can't get anywhere else?
yep.
So if that's Frankie Valli doing the chunky Chuck E. Cheese like animatronic live,
Yes.
I mean, it's better than having him not here. You know what I mean? So
The one,
that's
well, to go to your point with seeing Frankie, there's only one act that I could have seen that I didn't get a chance to, that I regret. I never saw Elvis. Elvis died at 77. I was 16 at the time. So, and he didn't play the Garden. Elvis only played the Garden once in 72 or 71 or 72. I was too young at that time. He would play he would play Nassau Coliseum. Back then, you didn't go to Long Island to see a concert. It just wasn't done. It just wasn't done. So I never got the chance to see Elvis. So I don't count that. But I did have tickets to see Sinatra. Now I'm not a Sinatra fan at all. Respect him, but I always loved Dino more than Sinatra because you made me think of the Rat Pack. But I had tickets to see Sinatra, but on the same night I had tickets to see the first Monkees reunion.
Mm.
So I chose the Monkees, right? Not knowing that the Monkees would reunite 50 times afterwards, and I would see them in every possible formation that they could. And Sinatra died a short time later, so I never got to see Sinatra. So that's the one icon that I mean, leading back to like to you, my advice to you would be like, yes, if you can see Frankie, see him because you may not get another chance.
Yeah, absolutely. I never saw the Ramones ever, and
I walked past Joey Ramone in New York City one time. Never saw them, but I walked past them one time.
yeah,
But well, it was easy to recognize.
yeah, I stood next to him at his show, and I had to just keep looking up, up,
Yeah,
up,
it's
up,
a
up.
giant.
Yeah, yeah. So you're right. You got to catch these things when you can.
Yeah,
Um,
just so you could pass it forward and say, hey, yeah, I did see them.
yeah,
You know.
yeah, definitely. You got to try to see the classics at least once while they're still around.
Got
Um,
time for one more quick story, my Hall of Fame story.
yeah.
The coolest thing I think one of the coolest things we ever did was when the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame first came out in the I think in 1988. It used to be a private induction ceremony. You could it was invitation only, right? So the only people that went were the artists and the record companies, right? It was at the Waldorf in New York. So I think it's 1989 comes up and the Beatles are getting inducted, right? So I'm saying to myself, you know what? This may be the only chance that the three of them will be there and get to see them. So how do I get into this event, right? So call a friend of mine who's in the travel industry. I said, "You got any connections at the Waldorf?" He's like, "Absolutely. I know the manager there." I'm like, "Well, what do you think? You think you could get me a room and sneak me into the show?" It's like, "No problem, no problem." So at the point, and it was the greatest class ever. It was the Beatles, the Beach Boys, Dylan, the Supremes. Um, I don't think there's one other act, but I mean, just those four. I mean, it doesn't get any better than that, right? So he calls me back. He goes, "All right, I got your room, and just go meet this person, and they'll tell you what to do." So my wife and I go out and get a tux, and me, I don't get dressed up for anything. Wife gets the new dress. We go to the Waldorf, walk into the room. It's a fucking suite. I don't know if you've ever been to the Waldorf. I've never been there, but everything is gold. Like all the faucets, everything is gold. I'm like, what the hell are we doing here? First of all, right? So, and now this is January 1989, I believe. So the woman comes in, she's mad. She goes, "Look, we have a problem." And I said, "What's the problem?" She goes, "Well, because it's the Beatles and we're New York, the security is pretty tight, more so than it's ever been. Because obviously Lennon had gotten killed 8 years earlier." Like she goes, "But don't worry, we'll figure something out." So we're sitting there like over the bed with a bunch of hangers trying to figure out the way to get in, right? To sneak in, right? Because typically what she said is normally I would just walk you in and nobody ask you questions. She said, but now there's security at every door, right? So okay, so we worked it out where we would go through the kitchen, go to the door. There was a door on the second level. That was the second level where you look down at the stage. You said there would be one security there. They go to lunch or dinner at this time, right? We'll sneak in there, right? Just pretend that we'll sneak out. We'll go out. I'll say goodbye. Pretend like you were in there already, right? So wife and I go out. I don't know if you ever seen Goodfellas, but did you ever see Goodfellas?
Oh yeah.
You remember the scene where they walk through the kitchen with the exactly like that. And this is before Goodfellas come out. So we're walking through the kitchen, following this lady. I'm in the tux. Donna's in a dress. All these cooks are looking at us. What the fuck are these people doing in here? Walk out of the kitchen, right? Walk out of the kitchen. Right across from the kitchen is the door to the second level of the arena. That's not an arena. It was the ballroom, right? Nobody's there. She's like, "All right, come on, come on, come on, come on." We say to her, say, "Hey, yeah, it was great. You want to come in with us?" No, no. I'll say, "Okay, we're having a great time." But open the door, run in. There's an empty table right there. Just run in. We sit down there. We're at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, right? Okay. Look around. There's stars everywhere. Paul Simon, Jeff Beck, Mick Jagger, Tina Turner, John Fogerty, Billy Joe, anybody you could ever fucking name that was anybody was there, right? Turns out two other people come sit next to us, and they're like, "So you work at Rolling Stone like we do?" We're like, "Yeah, yeah, we work at Rolling Stone. We work at Rolling Stone." Anyway, the whole thing goes off. It's the coolest night ever. Mick comes out, inducts the Beatles. Paul doesn't show up because he's pissed at the other two. But but again, they were all there. The end jam was George, Ringo, Dylan, Billy Joel, Jeff Beck, like I said, Bruce Springsteen. They all did. I saw her standing there. Mick was singing lead on it. George was shaking his head like he did in 1964. I mean, it was just Jeff Lynne was there. The Beach, like I said, everybody was there. It was just, I think, the coolest night ever. And we weren't married yet, so I guess my wife must have thought I was the king of the world, right? And then we went downstairs. We went downstairs after it was all done. Hoping we'd meet a Beatle. I wanted to meet a Beatle. That's all I wanted to do. Unfortunately, the Beatles went a different way. Everybody else went this way. So they're all walking by us. We're saying, "Hey, how you doing? Hey, how you doing?" You know what I mean? Where are they? Where are they? They were gone. But again, that's a special experience. I just thought I'd share. It's just the fact that we kind of snuck into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame when you couldn't get into it. Now it's open to everybody, and we got to see one of the first or the last Beatle things with because Julie and Sean were there on stage with them too, and to see them all play together was a special moment for me. So
I,
and it,
I never knew that story. That's
you
amazing.
never heard that story?
Oh,
Yeah, it was just a crazy kind of series of events. Like again, we went from the high of okay, we're going to see them to the low of we're never going to get in to getting in there and just being 10 feet away from George and Ringo and then all the every possible rock star you could imagine and just like and they played about 10 songs I think, not just Beatles songs. They did a couple Beatles songs and did Mick do Satisfaction? I think Mick ended it with Satisfaction. uh it was just I don't know who would ever think that you would see. Well, nowadays, again, they've all it's all changed. Back then, you'd never think you'd see George Harrison and Bruce Springsteen on the same microphone, right? And Bob Dylan, the three of them were on the same microphone. Who would ever think that? Nowadays, since that point, now everybody plays with everybody, right? But back then, it was such an oddity, and it wasn't televised, so you couldn't see it. So it was just, I think that was probably one of the coolest things. And that was pre-liner notes, believe it or not.
wow.
So
I never told you my Rock and Roll Hall of Fame story. Now that
go ahead.
it ties into the other genre of publishing we did. Um, I put out a book in 2010. It was a bunch of heavy metal interviews. And a couple years later, I heard through the grapevine that the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, which has a library and archives. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but there's the actual Rock Hall building. And then a mile or two down the road is the library and archives. It's basically like a research room, reading room, where they have books, manuscripts, signed contracts, lyrics. It's generally there for documentarians, filmmakers, researchers. There's not really a public thing. It's if you're doing a movie, you can go in there and
All
read
right.
some. They were looking for resource material that represented the history of rock and roll. And I thought, shit, let me reach out and see if they want to take my book on heavy metal. And I called them up and they said, yeah, send it to us and we'll review it. If we think it's, what we need, we'll let you know. We'll make it official. We'll send you a letter, the whole thing, you're in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And I sent it to them and they fucking did. They added it to the library and archives at the Rock and Roll
Oh,
Hall.
shit.
So, that was pretty cool. I still have the letter. As a matter of fact, I got the letter the same week I got credentialed to cover Obama for you. And
Oh, wow. I forgot about that.
yeah, talk about a week, man. It was like,
Wow. Yeah.
the White House is calling my shitty apartment at the time as the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is sending me the letter. It's like,
Wow.
how did I get here?
I
Um,
can't believe you never told me that story.
yeah, I kind of found myself having a habit, maybe too much of one, of church and stating a lot of things.
Yeah.
But now I got nothing to lose, I can tell you. So it was added to the library. Fast forward to 2021, towards the end of my tenure with Greco Publishing. Um, to give the viewer an idea, the automotive industry that we cover, or I covered and Tom still does, they have this quarterly meeting, a conference that goes all over the country. And they pick a different city and they meet every few months. The summer of 2021, this conference was held in Cleveland. And I thought, oh, how cool. I want to see if I can go to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame Library and Archives and see my book there. How could I not? So, long story short, the day before I fly out, I'm reading on the website about the library and archives. And in order to get in there, you have to give them 2 weeks notice and they have to interview you to get in there. See if you're a legit documentarian, whatever, to read the signed contracts and the stuff they have there. So I'm like, oh shit. It's like I'm leaving. I'm only going to be there for a day, because those were in and out. So you fly in, you do your conference, you stay for a couple hours, you're back that night or early the next morning. So I get the email address and I send this very like impassioned letter, like I'm an author of a book in the Rock Hall. I'm only in town for a day. I understand you have a protocol to follow, but gosh, it'd be really nice if I can get in there and check it out. So I get a call like 15 minutes later from this very nice lady who was like the director. I still have her card in my wallet somewhere. And she's like, we normally don't do this for people, but you have a book here, and we definitely don't do this right now because it's COVID. They're still wearing masks and the lady said, we're understaffed. It's just me right now. However, if you show up at such and such a time, I will turn the lights on and let you and you alone tour the library and archives for
Wow.
30 minutes.
Wow. That's it.
Yeah. But I'm like, okay, I'll take it.
Yeah.
So I went to the morning meeting that we normally cover that day, and there was like a 90-minute gap between meetings. So of course I rush out of the hotel, I get a cab, boom, I'm at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame archives. So I go in there and it's so cool. This archive is so cool. And I'm the only one there, it's just myself and this lady. So I tracked down my book. I'm like, she's like, you want me to take a picture of you in the book? I'm like, hell yeah. So, I got my Black Sabbath mask on, the whole thing. And then she's like, when we have an author come in, we always ask them to sign their book and then we display it in a special section of signed works. Would you mind doing that? I'm like,
Wow.
what am I going to say? No, no, no. So I signed it, and if I ever make it back there, they have it under glass and everything there now at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Wow.
Yeah. So this lady
That's
was,
great.
yeah, this lady was just super cool. She's like, we don't do it, but you're only in town for a day. We'll skip the interview process. We believe you. We can see your picture. Come in. So I had my half hour. So I did that morning meeting, went to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, saw my book, signed the book, put it up in the display, got the cab back, and then sat in the conference the rest of the afternoon. I didn't do anything.
Oh, I'm sure when I talk about highs and lows.
Yeah. Well, I found some joy in having that experience that nobody else knew about. I just
Yeah,
went there,
must have
had
been glowing. That's great.
So there are cool moments, and there are cool moments when you travel that things sort of intersect, and that was just the perfect storm, being in that city that day, having the opportunity, because I wouldn't, buy a ticket to fly to Cleveland. I was there for
Sure.
work.
Yeah, it just happens.
So there were a
But
lot.
things happen when you stay home too. Got one more story for you, real quick. My Pat Denizio story.
Mm,
Pat Denizio obviously was the leader of the Smithereens, right? Great band, loved them. He was doing in the early 2000s. He was doing a living room tour. Were you here for that?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay. So I said, "Oh, I love Pat Denizio. That would be cool to have him in my living room, right?" So we set it up, and it wasn't cheap. I think it was 2 grand actually back in early 2000s. That wasn't cheap. So I invited some people over. I charged them, I don't know, whatever, $25, but still, what do we have? 30 people here at most. Um, so Pat, I say to Pat, I said, Pat, okay, listen, I don't, the only way I want to do this is if I can write the set list, right? It's my house. I can write the set list, right? It's like, absolutely. So I write the set list and I say, okay, this, and Pat, this song is my favorite song ever. It was Strangers When We Meet. It was the first song on their first album. I said, just I said, play around with this as much as you want, but just play Strangers When We Meet, and I'll be happy, right? So he comes in and he plays. It's him and a roadie, and again, we had 30 guys here, and a lot of them my relatives who had no idea who he was. So it was fun because Pat was a great guy. He was jovial and interactive, whatever. So he plays about an hour and a half, whatever. He doesn't do Strangers When We Meet. So I go, it's Pat. He goes, you didn't play the song that I asked you to play. He's like, oh, I forgot. I'm like, well, I paid you $2,000. It's like, oh, sorry. He never played the fucking song. So moved to a year later. For some reason or another, we became friends after that, right? He only lived about 30 minutes away down in Scotch Plains. And he ran for senator in New Jersey. So I became part of his campaign. And so which was looking back on it, there's actually a documentary on it. I have a copy of it. It's on IMDb, but I don't know where else you can get it. But it's pretty funny because he had no chance. Like, I mean, if it's kind of like if you think Robert Kennedy had no chance, think
Yeah.
about a million times less of
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
chance that he was running against
Corzine, right?
John Corzine, right, who was only worth about $1 billion at the time.
Right.
So we go. So again, we became friendly. I drove him to a couple concerts and stuff. So the time he calls me up, he says, "Hey, The Exorcist is playing down the street. You want to go?" I said, "Well, it's not really down the street for me. It's down the street from you." He's like, "Nah, come on, we'll go. We'll go." I pick him up. I said, we'll go. And he goes, "You treating?" I said, "What do you mean, my treating?" He goes, "I said, you invited me." He goes, "Well, I don't have any money." I said, "You're in the fucking smithereens. You don't have money?" He goes, he shrugs. So I treated him to see the Exorcist. Okay, we get out. It's fine, whatever. We get to the end of the campaign, and we're in his campaign headquarters, which is a little office space. And back then, computers were it was way early with returns to the internet. So we're getting returns like maybe every 45 minutes, and it'd be like Corzine 10,000, Patanizio 2,
Yeah.
Corzine 100,000, Patanizio 7. You can actually see this in the video. We're trying not to laugh, like we're behind him, like what the fuck? We spent all this time trying to help this guy. I felt bad for him because he really was a nice guy.
I remember him hanging at the office, even election night. He was coming to because I was working on deadline in the office in Nutley. And then
Mm-hmm.
walks Pat. I'm like, shouldn't you be out like, talking to the people? And he's in our
I
office.
do remember that now that you mention it. Yeah, he was a piece of work. Died much too young though.
Yeah, he was cool. I mean, I remember I sent him a demo of the band I was in at the time. And I remember him calling me up. And I don't know if he was just being a nice guy. He could have been, but he's like, this is real fucking music, Joel. This is really great. And I'm like, you know, at that time, as it still does now, there are worse things to hear than a singer from the Smithereens saying your band is real fucking music.
Yeah.
So, I always thought that was cool. And actually, I don't think I saw him at your house. You and I saw him at a backyard show because I remember I came home that night and I had like a couple of his lawn signs, his campaign lawn signs. And I had those the blue and white ones. Remember, it just said Denizio for Senate.
Yeah.
I had those for years, and I think I may have tossed them when I moved to LA in
Huh.
2000. I had
Was that
for,
was that the one at his house?
I'm trying to remember if I place it, it was like October-ish because it was a little chilly
Yeah,
out.
the fall. Yeah, I think that was the one at his house.
Okay, that was his place.
I think so. Yeah.
And I remember I wanted to hear Behind the Wall of Sleep and
Yeah.
songs, and I shouted that out, and he went right into it. And I'm like, perfect,
There you
perfect.
go. You got your wish. At least you did.
Well, look, I mean, yeah, Pat had his foibles perhaps, but I liked the fact that he was on, TV news at that time
Yeah.
talking about these issues with Napster and
Ah, I believed in him as a candidate. I really did. And he was sincere. It was kind of like hapless. He really had no chance. And but he believed in it. I mean, he was totally sincere. It wasn't a joke. He believed he could change. Uh, but again, like I said, God rest his soul. Great guy. Made a lot of great music. Very nice. Never again. You think the Smithereens, they had what? They had several hits. I mean, Blood and Roses, Girl Like You. but they made no money. I mean, and I think he ended up losing his house because even back then, unless you were a megastar, there was no money to be made, and you felt bad because they very talented band. He wrote all the songs, very talented singer, very talented player, and they were a kick-ass live band. They really were, um, and it's a shame that it came to an end like that. And but I have good memories of Pat. I think they make for funny stories, but I have good memories of him. He's a good friend for a while. He
Right.
wanted me to be no his. I remember I drove him down to Martell's down the shore, and he was opening for the Southside Johnny, and Southside's manager came up to me thinking I was Pat's manager. He's like, I can, hook me up with Pat, hook me up with Pat. I'm getting Southside 10 grand a night to make $1 million a year. I'm like, I'm not his manager. Go talk to him. but, but so that was an interesting side of it. That this guy just going to play with a guitar, he could have made a really good living, but he didn't do it. I don't know why. I don't know why.
Well, I think, they started off on an indie label,
Yeah.
which now helps. They started, Girl Like You was 89. They were a little older than a lot of the bands that were hitting at that time. And they had that 2-year window from 89 to 91. 91 was Nevermind. The Smithereens did Too Much Passion that year, which
There
is
you
an
go.
awesome song. But if they came out with another song like Only a Memory or something like Rockin' that year,
Yeah.
it may have been different. It may have just been a case of the wrong song on radio at the wrong time.
Good point.
Think
Even
about,
Blood and Rose would have worked then.
yeah, something really kind of, because Pat had that kind of bitter, biting vibe to a
Yeah.
lot of heavier songs.
Yeah.
If they came out with a rocker, like the album later, the heavier one with Million Miles from Nowhere, is that the song?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think John Gotti was on that too, right?
Yeah, if they came out with that album
Yeah,
in
that
one
was much
of the
harder.
80s,
Yeah.
it would have been a different story for them. But again, it's just like bad timing. You don't know what's going to hit. Nirvana hit. The Smithereens were kind of soft, and they were kind of old too. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
which is important. I've had some interaction with Dennis, the drummer, super nice guy. Compared to Cobain and that whole like the Sound Gardens that were hitting at the time, wrong look for a band. And I hate
Oh
this
yeah.
because I'm bald and fat, so
Yeah, exactly.
I'm
Yeah.
speaking from the same side of the fence here. Um,
The
but
Bunny Carlos Club.
yeah, it's tough, and I think that might have hurt the Smithereens. Although, what a band! I mean, that's not in the
The bass line from Blood and Roses, that's just turn that up, man.
yeah.
Turn that up.
Have you seen them since they've been out with the other guys filling in?
Nah, I've seen them on YouTube and I just they don't I mean I like Marshall Crenshaw, but his voice is too weak for them. And then who's the other guy from
Robin Wilson,
it's the guy from not Smashing Pumpkins.
Jim Block.
From, yes, yeah, yeah. I don't. Again, they don't have this deep baritone that Pat has, and I think that's what those songs need. And I
Yeah.
just think it just doesn't work for me, you know. But there's an again, you have the records and Pat, those they have 5 solid records. I think that are really really good. There's not a lot of filler on their records. After that, they were kind of hit and miss. When they started doing the covers albums, I think they kind of lost me.
Do you know I published the world's first review of the Lost album that they came out with a couple years ago?
I don't know if you told me that or not. I don't know. But the Lost album was just like demos, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's I can't recall the full story. I'll send you the link. I did a write-up
Yeah.
on it. It's
Yeah.
okay. And actually their Wikipedia page cites my site for that album's
Was it
entry.
really?
Yeah.
Cool.
Um
Cool.
Somehow I get an email like, this is the Smithereens Lost album. It's out, blah, blah, blah. Here's the promo download. And I'm like, holy shit, the Smithereens. So there's no mention in the email like this is embargoed until whatever date. So I happen to have a free afternoon. I love the Smithereens. I put it on. As I'm first listening, I'm writing. So I post it up right away, send it to the public. No, I sent it to the band's Facebook page. And they're like, how did you get this? we didn't send this out to anybody yet. I'm like, I got an email from so and so. They're like, oh no, and I'm like, sorry, there wasn't any sort of embargo because you get that sometimes, like don't
Yeah.
put this till September 2nd or whatever.
Yeah.
So without noticing it or even planning on it, I got the first review out of the gate. It has happened a couple of times with me, but um, yeah,
So they sold 10 copies instead of 15.
probably, probably. But it's a good record. I mean, you can tell it's not up to the level of anything they released at the time. That's the thing with rarities, going back to what you said earlier. Usually it's off the record for a reason.
Yeah.
Uh, so it's cool from a fan perspective, but I've never heard any demos like, oh my God, this blows away the studio record. You'll never
Nah,
hear.
few and far between.
Yeah,
Definitely.
exactly. So as we wrap things up, we've been at this almost 2.5 hours, believe it or
Oh
not.
my God, really? I didn't know that. Wow.
It's like
Okay.
driving, it's like driving back from Boston, you and me in the early
Oh
days.
yeah. Now except we're not playing who sang this?
Yes, right. Um, when Liner Notes was in publication, there was a classic concluding question we asked all the artists, and at the end of the year, we would compile our favorite responses. So we used to have a few dozen different people give their answers to this question, and it was always fun to ask because you never quite knew what people would say. So because it was your concept and your idea, I got to ask you the classic Liner Notes closing question. Your CD collection is on fire. Which one do you save?
Well, let me qualify that first. I actually stole that from somebody, and I can't remember who it was. It was in another mag. It probably was a British magazine that I knew nobody that read liner notes would know, but I definitely stole that from somebody. I can't remember who it was, but the other qualifier I always put on that question was I thought if somebody said a greatest hits that they were cheating. So, but I couldn't tell them that. Personally, I hated it when they said a greatest hits because that doesn't count. So I'll rule out any greatest hits. I also have to separate the Beatles from everybody else because my first 13 albums would be Beatles. But if I had to pick a Beatle one, it would be A Hard Day's Night because that album is complete joy. You can't listen to it without feeling happy, smiling, and also it's the closest thing to a Lennon solo album during the Beatles as anything else because I think he wrote 9 of the 13 songs. He sings lead on 9 of 13 songs. So it'd be A Hard Day's Night. It also would be the White Album because obviously it has so many songs on it. But the other album might surprise you. The other CD that I definitely say would be Hearts of Stone by Southside Johnny and the Asbury Jukes.
Mm.
Album never ever tires for me. I think it's the greatest album ever recorded by a New Jersey artist. Bruce fans can kill me if they want. I think it's every song is a 10. I think Bruce wrote 3 of them. Little Steven wrote the other 6. But from beginning to end. And it's funny because I hated Bruce Springsteen in the 70s. And I didn't even know who the Jukes were because all my friends loved them. And it was like Kiss too. I hated Kiss in the 70s because everybody loved them, right? With Kiss, you know what? With Kiss, I went and saw them at the Garden in '79 on the Dynasty tour. And I only went because I'm like, you know what? Everybody talks about this show. This show. Let's see what the big deal is about. Next day, I went out and bought every one of their albums, and
Mm.
I've been in love with them ever since. With Bruce took me a little longer, but I'll never forget. I was driving on Franklin Avenue, past the ShopRite, and Scott Muni on WNEW plays "Talk to Me" off of Hearts of Stone by Southside Johnny. I'm like, what the fuck is this? This is amazing, and it hit me like somebody punched me in the face. I went out and bought Hearts of Stone. Haven't stopped listening to it. I bet you I listen to that at least once a month, all the
Mm.
way through. It to me, and it's so underrated. It should have been up there, but the record company bailed on it when Southside on tour with it, and it got great reviews, 5-star reviews everywhere. Rolling Stone named it one of the best albums of the '70s, I think. But Southside got hurt on stage. He fell and ripped his arm open, so he got off the road for 2 weeks like right at the beginning of the tour. So all the publicity, everything went right out the window. But it's just that is, with all this stuff with little Steven out with, there's a big documentary on HBO about him, and he's in the news all the time now. To me, that's his greatest work ever, is the work he did with Southside Johnny, specifically on Heart to Stone. And I actually interviewed both of them and asked them about that album. I actually asked them about the outtakes because they recorded a full album before they did Heart to Stone and threw it away. And those songs ended up actually being Steven's first solo album. So I've been on the lookout for the last 40 years, 45 years for those outtakes, because those songs are great, and it would be great to hear Southside do them. Southside had no idea where they were. Steven had no idea where they were. Maybe Epic Records, not Epic. Epic was on Columbia. Maybe Columbia Records has them somewhere. I don't know. My daughter worked for Columbia Records. I told her to go digging. She couldn't do it. But that's my holy grail would be to find two things. My holy grail musically would be to find the first album that Southside Johnny recorded before House of Heart Stone and threw away. And then, of course, I think what every Beatles holy grail is John Lennon's last live performance with Elton John and Madison Square Garden on Thanksgiving 1974. Nobody seems to have any film of that, which is a shame, because that doesn't exist. But that's it.
Yeah. So a very long answer for one album.
Yeah, sorry.
No, no.
No,
That's
the Hard Day's
it.
Night, or Hearts of Stone.
Yeah. I mean, that's the whole point. You get wrong about talking about music with somebody who loves it. There's no quick answer, and that's what I love about doing this. You never that's why we can go 2.5 hours, because there's a passion there, and I love the fact
What's
that
your album?
that's tough. I mean, my immediate response actually is probably Bon Jovi's Slippery When Wet.
Wow, that's a surprise.
The reason for that is, of all the styles of music I've been into since underground, noise, whatever it is, that was the first album I ever bought with my own money. And Bon Jovi was my first concert and the first band that I went crazy about. If I ever interview somebody from Bon Jovi, like the key members, I'll probably pack it in that day. Like my work here is done. So it would be that, because I can rebuild a record collection because it all starts from Slippery When Wet. So as long as I had that on me, I could build again, because that's the foundation it all came from. So I probably would pick that record of all the, yeah, and
Shock.
all the esoteric shit that I own, all the cool stuff. I would go for my cassette of Slippery When Wet, which is still in my office to this day. Can't
I
borrow.
did interview I did interview Richie for Liner Notes, if you remember.
I
And
do.
he was such a nice guy. He really was.
Yeah, I've heard that about him. Again, I wish he would come back. That was my era. I can't get into it. The later stuff. I can't remember the last time I heard a Bon Jovi album and thought, wow, this is what I remember.
Yeah.
Maybe New Jersey was the last record I really loved, and that goes
I
back
would I would give you Keep the Faith. I think Keep the Faith was our last great album.
yeah. Yeah. I thought they went a little too off the rails on that one. I thought it was a little bit too, like, they were trying to make a statement.
Yeah, which
And
I think they were.
I love statement bands, of course, but Bon Jovi, I want to hear, some bands can't get away with being baby I love you bands. Fucking
Yeah,
Bon Jovi is a baby I love you band. If you're away from that, I don't want to know. Like, I don't give them leeway. I don't know why. I give everybody else leeway, but Bon Jovi's that, girl in the back seat, graduation year, down at the shore. So classic New Jersey. I can't get into them any other way. Like, the first three albums, I think, are perfect.
yeah.
Perfect. And I saw them
I hate the second one. I don't understand that. They hate the second one. The second one's great.
yeah. Yeah. I think the second one, sometimes I favor that over Slippery When Wet.
I wouldn't say it's definitely better than the first one, but I don't think it's better than Slippery.
Yeah.
But
Well,
yeah,
I think
one more question. What do you, if you and I had to pick one song, what would it be? Let me see if you know this answer.
one
That we
song,
both agree. One song that we think is the greatest Well, I mean, obviously there's a million of them, but you and I would agree on this song is if we had to agree on one song, it
Yeah,
would be this.
yeah.
You know what it is?
Yes, because there's only one answer to this question. I've had conversation with people and I've debated this point. There's not even a contest. There's only one song. Be My Baby by the Ronettes.
Absolutely. The perfect record.
It is. It's got drama, it's got production, it's got Ronnie Spector's amazing voice. I have
Yep.
had this conversation to the point where people's eyes glaze over. But it's never been bettered as a pop song.
Nope.
It's
Nope.
perfect. You know, the Hal Blaine, boom, boom, boom. Bah. I mean, that is pure simplicity and effectiveness in sound production. All the pieces fit perfectly. Nobody's better than that. And I would dare say even the Beatles when they were at their poppiest didn't touch that song.
No, not in terms of completeness.
Yeah.
No, no, it has every element, like you just said, every element. I think the only one that may come close is the sequel, basically, "Don't Worry, Baby" by the Beach Boys,
Yeah.
which is an answer song to that. Not near it. I shouldn't say that. It's not close, but I always because he wrote that as based on "Be My Baby." To me, that's another phenomenal song. But we can go on forever on that. But absolutely, "Be My Baby." One song you can't fuck up, no matter who does it. You can't fuck it up. You can't. As I've shared with you, I have dozens of versions of it. It's the one song that you can't fuck up.
Did you ever see Ronnie live?
Yes, several times.
I only saw her once. It was remember when there used to be the Joey Ramone tribute shows in New York City.
Yeah, yeah,
I think it was at the Bowery Ballroom. It was Ronnie. She did like a four-song set. She was back. Remember the Losers Lounge from back in the
yeah,
day?
yeah. Absolutely.
It was Ronnie backed by the Losers Lounge band. So Joe McGinty and all those
Yeah,
guys.
yeah. I know those guys. Yeah,
And she closed her set with Be My Baby. Now, mind you, this is a punk rock crowd. This is a Ramones crowd. You know, everybody's tough punk rockers. There was not a fucking dry eye on that floor.
yes,
Grungy ass, dirty, drunken, fucking shooting up in the bathroom types in the New York, the New York scene back then, just puddles
100%.
watching that woman sing. You're like, that's it. Like
Yep,
take this in. It's not going to get better than this. This is
yep,
the best pop ever. So I'm so happy I got to see that, because
yeah,
to be in the presence of someone like that's the real thing. You always know when it's the real thing.
yep.
And it doesn't matter what genre it is. You can take the most hardcore punk rocker or the biggest jazz guy. You put that song on, you can't fuck with that song. It's just
You can.
it's bulletproof, you
It's
know?
the perfect record. The perfect record for
Yeah,
sure.
definitely. Well, I gotta tell you, man, this has been the perfect conversation. I'm glad we finally got to do this.
Absolutely.
And we've been at it a while, but we used to have these conversations constantly when we were working together. So
I missed them. Absolutely missed them.
yeah, well, we'll definitely do this again in the future, and we'll definitely have to hit Nutley and do the pizza thing. And
Absolutely. Yep. And the hot dog thing. Yeah,
yes, gotta get back down to ruts.
there you go. Yep.
Yeah, I know my roots. I don't forget that
I
shit.
know you do. Also, shoot, I just won't send you on the subway.
All right. I was hoping we get through it. You tell that story, then I'll cut you off. How's that?
Oh no, I don't have to tell it. It's okay.
No, okay, I'll tell it. I'll tell it. All right. So everybody knows the Subway sandwich shop, of course, right? We're in the office one day. I didn't really know Nutley. I knew the office. I knew the pizza place we referenced in the beginning, a couple places in town to get lunch. That's really all I knew about Nutley. I'll tell you another story too before we wrap up. But so one day Tom says, go to Subway and pick up lunch. Threw me some cash. Like, yeah, it's down the road to the right or whatever. So I'm looking. I don't see the Subway. So this is before everything was on your phone. So I stopped somewhere and asked where the subway was.
Wait, can I stop you there? Literally, if you looked out the window, you could see the subway sign from our office. Go ahead.
All right, try not to go there. So I end up at the literal subway, and I guess it would be in like Newark, right?
In Newark, yes, which is
Now, mind,
about 10 miles away.
now, mind you, I'm on the clock. I was just gonna leave for a couple minutes to get some sound, just bring it back. It's like 45 minutes later. I'm standing in the subway in Newark, So to this day, that's
Oh
always
wait, I'm back at the office. I'm like, where the fuck is Joel? It's literally 10 minutes at most to go to Subway by car, pick it up, come back. Now, say you left at 1 o'clock, it's a quarter to two. I'm asking everybody, where the fuck is Joel? And we're wondering. You were gone at least an hour. You come walking back in. I'm like, where the fuck were you? Laughing. And he goes, well, I stopped somewhere and asked somebody where Subway. I said, what do you mean you asked? It's right there. You could see it. He's like, well, I asked somebody where the Subway is, and they sent me to Newark. And I said, what do you mean they sent you to Newark? There's a Subway in Newark? He goes, no, the actual Subway. Subway cars? I was just like, I was laughing so hard I couldn't be mad. It's the funniest story ever, and that's just Joel. I mean, we again, like you said, we tell that to this day. There's two of us left in the office that were there, and uh, never fails to get us laughing. Oh,
yeah.
Joel, I was those are good times.
I
Good
got
times.
I got to tell you my official introduction to Nutley because publishing, you work until the work is done, right? So there were a lot of late nights there. I was relatively new at the job, and I think it may have been my first or second automotive issue, right? So I really wanted to do a good job. It's a topic I wasn't really, knowledgeable of at the time. I really wanted to impress you and write really good content. So I'm in the office late at night, and I used to chain smoke, which drove you crazy, but I used to go out in the alley there next to our building and smoke. So it's late at night. When I write sometimes, the smoke gets going. So this is like after midnight. I'm in the alley having a cigarette. I jeans and a t-shirt, nothing special. A lady walks by in a fur coat. I say good evening. She gives me a strange look and kind of walks on. I thought, okay, I don't know. Within seconds, I'm surrounded by some of the locals. You got business here? I'm sorry, what do you mean? You got business here? Who are you? No, who are you with? That's what the question was. Who are you with? And I'm like, oh, I work upstairs at the blah 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 office. I work for, and the guy was like, yeah, yeah. So I showed him the business card. And he's like, oh, okay, okay, no problem. The lady walked by. She was a little concerned. We don't know who you are. It's late at night. We wanted to check it out. You tell Tommy we said hello and the whole thing, you know. And I'm like, what the fuck did I just walk into? I'm 23 years old out of school. I'm living up in the sticks in Sussex at the time, driving down to Nutley. And I'm there like the first 2 weeks, and I get surrounded by Paulie, fucking big pussy, you know, the welcoming committee. But every time I see those guys after, hey Joel, how you doing, buddy? How's it going? You know. So they were checking me out, and I'm like, that was my introduction, so
Nothing's changed, Joel. Same thing.
good. You know what? I
What we love
appreciate
about
I appreciate that now more than ever, because you don't get that in other parts of the country. Certainly not up here in New Hampshire.
trust me, the Columbus statue will never come down in Nutley.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. I hear you. Well, listen, my friend, this has been great.
Same here, buddy. Enjoyed it.
Yeah. And again, not to end this on a sappy note, but really, it's your fault I do all this stuff. You gave me the proper home to grow as a writer and to have these experiences. And my career was based on my time with you. So thank you for everything you've given me over the years. Um, You know, publishing's not an easy business. It's not getting any easier, as you know. And the fact you're still in the game in the way you are is just a testament to the heart you bring to it. So never stop doing that. Never stop being who you are. And thank you for everything.
Thank you, Joel. Yeah, obviously, I'm proud of everything you've done. And if you could say I played any part of it, uh, I'm honored to be thought of in that way. But it was always in you. If I help bring it out a little bit, then the world is better off for it. So
Again,
feel
man,
so.
thanks for coming on the show. We will do this again, I promise.
All right, buddy. I'll talk to you soon.
Take it easy.